slowly because of denial, right? You know, because the first thing is, not shit, not now.
Yeah.
But thank you all for your input, I appreciate it.
We're ready to go.
Okay. We'll call to order the Planning Commission meeting for April 19th, and we'll begin with roll call.
Chair Spears.
Present.
Vice Chair Hutt.
Here.
Commissioners Catalano.
Here.
Dennison.
Here.
Desai.
Here.
Fryerman Hunt. And Pevsner.
Okay, we do have an agenda, and we have a quorum, and we'll look for an agenda. I'm looking for someone to
I'll move approval of the agenda.
I'd second that.
move in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay. And now we'll look at the approval of the minutes of April 5th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I found one typo. On line 188, it says that I adjourned the meeting, but it was actually Bob who did.
Okay, anything else?
I'm gonna abstain, obviously, I wasn't here, but are we gonna have enough to?
I have to abstain.
Oh, we're down to 3. What?
Well, 3's a majority of a quorum tonight, so for approval of the minutes, I think it's gonna be good enough.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And all those opposed? And abstained? 2.
Abstain.
Okay. This is the time for audience comment, but as I look out, we have no audience, so without making the announcement, why don't we go from audience comments directly into our discussion, our first discussion item.
And the first discussion item is continued discussion regarding amendments to the municipal codes, chapter 17.36, which is the commercial zone of the Sierra Madre Municipal Code, and other related zone provisions, which include the manufacturing zone, variances, and discretionary permits. So the last time the Planning Commission discussed the item was on March 15th, and we had several changes that are included in your packet, both highlighted. And there's also a second attachment companion piece to that, which is the red line version that was originated from the subcommittee. So the first attachments, all any comments that we did not have any additional changes to were accepted in that red line version. So only the areas with red lines presently are the ones that we had discussion about at our last meeting, where we had additional changes to. Did you want to go through these, John?
Well, I think we can attack it 2 ways. One is we can go over, basically, what we did last time was we skipped uses and did everything else. So we can do that again and try to finish up that part where we have some red lines, make sure they work. And I think the big open issue there is how much we want to regulate color. Or we can just go into uses and get done with that and then try to wrap up the whole thing. I think either direction works. Depends what people feel like they want to talk about first.
Does anybody have any strong opinions on this?
I mean, I would think we'd go through where the few red lines we have.
Okay, well, yeah, we can do
Yeah,
that.
Just tackles the uses as it's.
It's fine.
Looking at the red line for the commercial code then, the first revision was on 1736-030C, and these revisions were made really just to clarify, and basically we'd written out in paragraph form, and we put them into line items to make it more clear.
Okay.
Is everybody good with that?
Cool.
And then on the next page, 1736-040B, this is where we get into the colors, and we added this language back in that was in the prior code. And so again, we thought we'd add this language in just so we could look at it because we didn't really decide what we wanted to do. But it is interesting to note, and this was done in the staff report, that if you look at the general plan discussion of color, it doesn't have any greater regulation of color discussion in the commercial section than it does in multifamily. But for some reason, our code has tighter restriction of color in commercial rather than multifamily. And I'm pretty sure we didn't change that in the update of the general plan. So that's probably just some archaic thing from our code from a long time ago. And so, you know, I know that color regulation is an issue that we've struggled about. I know that people are concerned about it in other areas. There was a bright blue house in the Upper Canyon that's recently being done, and some people were having unction over. So, you know, to me, it seems like sort of a stretch, but.
I mean, this language in here, I don't know if we had problems with it, but I mean, it's other than the second line there, which is talking about bolder colors are reserved for like secondary or accents.
Mm-hmm.
The first sentence, I mean, it says that it encourages.
Yeah, I don't have
not
any
saying,
problem with
like,
earth tone and
It must be
right.
a certain palette, you know. But I mean, to your point also, the R3, all the codes that we've kind of gone through, they're generally talking about a compatibility, you know, a relative compatibility with the surrounding context in terms of color, you know, material and color, you know, like that language is always kind of not boilerplate, but typical, you know. So there's some consistency if we want that consistency, which is across all of our sort of zoning codes, you know, or is this a special animal and we need to treat it differently, you know? Maybe it is, I don't know.
Any opinions about color?
I think that that first sentence where it says are encouraged would be about as far as I'd be willing to go. I feel like anything past that's a stretch. So that second sentence I would not be agreeable to, but I think I could live with that first one. Do people feel strongly that it needs to be there? That we need to comment on color?
I mean, I know where we left off last time, like my whole thinking was, I'm personally not in favor of a real contrasted color palette in the downtown area where you get like 90% of the people follow that first sentence, you know, and then suddenly some storefront or building comes along and it's, I think last time we talked about, you know, the banana boat, you know, when it turned yellow. I had a problem with that, you know, just because it stood out as near the corner, the intersection, you know, but a lot of the buildings are sandwiched up and you're really just talking about the front. You're not really talking about the sides, but I just think there's some, our downtown isn't sort of constructed that way where you get like a bold palette of colors, you know, like an orange or red, you know, like there are certain places where that works and that's sort of their theme, you know, but I don't think we have that, you know, and in a lot of cases we have facades that vary in materials too, from brick to stucco to, you know, they're not all like stucco and then we're changing colors, you know. So I had some concern with that. I like the first sentence. I think that's fine as far as how far we go. I'm okay with the second sentence because to me that also gets into specificity of how you should paint your facade, like only the trim or the accent. Like I don't know if we need to go there. You know, I don't know if it adds anything as far as control for us.
I have a question about control. If we use the word should in there, what does that give the city in terms of regulatory practice?
Well, to the extent that it's, that these issues are part of some kind of a discretionary permit, then you can implement it, you can require it, you can say, well, the code says this, and we'd rather see this color as opposed to that color. But if there's no discretionary permit in place, no vehicle to attach this to, then it really is just a strong suggestion.
So it's not per se a regulatory issue unless it's part of some other kinds of permitting process. So there's nothing that keeps a downtown business owner from painting their front of their building bright pink
That's
because
right.
they think it's going to attract business or make them stand out.
That's right. If you want that, then we probably should be more specific, not use the word should, but use the word shall.
There you go.
And then that would create the opportunity in the city of someone who's already an existing commercial property owner and wants to paint their, chartreuse or something. That would create an ability with neighbors, et cetera, to complain to the city, and then the city could send them a letter saying that you can't use that color because it's not in keeping with the community theme and the appearance. It doesn't blend with the environment and with your neighbors, et cetera, et cetera.
That's still opinion.
Sure, yeah, but aesthetics are inherently subjective, but that doesn't mean that they're illegal. Subjective regulations are absolutely enforceable.
And
Plenty of
because
case law that says so.
the way it's phrased now, because it's part of a permitting process, does this coexist with our design review process?
This would be like, it really is an aspect of design review. When you're getting into color and use of materials on the exterior, you are kind of entering into design review, yeah.
Does that help? I mean, the fact that it's not a mandated position for people who already own a structure, but it's only if they're coming through some kind of permitting regulatory process?
So what I think our esteemed attorney had said last time was that if somebody, after the fact, had changed it because they got the permit under that condition, that was what allowed us to go back and enforce if they changed
If it was
it
in
later.
the permit, right.
If it was in the permit.
If it was
right.
in the
Condition,
permit.
But
yeah.
if it's just a previous building, they could. Unlike our current code has the word shall. It says earth tone or natural colors shall be used and accents, blah, blah, blah. So, this language that we have here is a little toned down from that. So, I mean, I guess there's sort of three levels of where you want to go. Whether you want to go to the full shall, whether you want the should on the whole pastel bright, or you just want to jettison that altogether and just leave it at earth tone and natural colors are encouraged.
I would jettison the second. Just because that whole paragraph is talking it's talking about not just colors, but materials, textures, everything that's the look and feel of a building, which is all subjective for sure. But the point being, it's all, encourage or should be compatible. So I think that second sentence is getting into some specificity that I don't think is really part of this paragraph to me. It's saying, if you're going to use these colors only on trim or accent, I think that we should just get rid of it and leave it with the first sentence.
I'm fine with that.
Are you okay with that?
I am.
Yeah, I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not. Let me just express my concern about that to everybody. First of all, maybe we should just make it perfectly consistent with the other code language you were referring to. I guess the best way to preface it is that I spent time in communist Poland and communist East Germany, okay, and the idea of just saying earth tones and natural colors are encouraged because a lot of people interpret that as just meaning brown and beige and nothing else, and that'll really make downtown a drag. Just like I think they had something on the books in Poland about gray and gray or something like that, but it more worries me that that if you just say earth tones, that so many people understand that in such narrow terms that could really be deadening. I would rather allow for something like that new French restaurant in town with the back of their building painted baby blue, and it works. So I don't know how you all want to interpret. I'm trying to be careful myself because I could picture things in a very artistic way, but I'm trying to listen for what the sensibility of the town wants to be, which is more important than how I would paint it. So
I mean, I disagree with your first comment in the sense of, yeah, okay, many people may see that language as narrowly defined palette, but at the same time, if I'm a business owner and you present me with that, and if I may or may not have an architect on board, but I'm gonna look at that in the maximal way possible. I'm not, like, if my range is earth tones and compatible colors, boy, I'm not gonna find a brown. I'm gonna find like a nice, you know, avocado green or something, you know, that might work, you know. Like, I think you could look at that as, how can I maximize this sort of narrowly focused palette
well,
for my business?
How could we encourage people to do that, do you think?
Well, even that's just encouraged. I mean,
I think the language here isn't narrowly focused. It says basically, I mean, what it's saying is, look at your neighbors, look at your context. Like, if there are a bunch of banana boats that are yellow and baby blue, go for it. If the compatible sort of context is tan and brown, then there you go. But I don't think that's the case. I think downtown you do have an eclectic range of, you know, you've got greens and whites and browns and reds. And
do you think earth
I mean,
tone and natural colors is too limiting? I mean,
no, I
you
think
could strike that
Joe
sentence.
is saying that when people hear that, that basically says, oh, my palette is desert tan, Navajo white, which is, you know, your apartment color.
That's what
and
worries
brown.
me.
The general public, maybe, but this is focused towards a business owner or building owner or someone who has a commercial interest, you know, requesting a permit to paint their building or upgrade their facade. From that lens, I would see it more as, how can I, within that palette, how can I maximize the visibility of my storefront? You know, okay, earth tones. Greens are earth tones, you know, sky blue, like, I don't know, maybe that, I mean,
Could I ask?
natural.
Could I ask staff, when people come in to see you, which way is it going? Are they all like being very, very conservative, or are they being more open? Like, what do you see in there?
Typically, what occurs is a property owner will paint the building because they want to get as much visibility, you know, make more of a statement. They don't come in to see us, and then we get complaints. And then the complaint.
Third way, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll look at the ordinance and says, yes, is this really a pastel color? And then we go from there and get them to come in and see if we need to make changes to that or not.
yeah, I think is a good bet is if you don't use the word shall, there's a lot of people who just ignore it entirely.
Right.
Like, encourage means nothing. To be frank, to a lot of people, you can encourage me to do whatever I want. If you're not requiring it, I do whatever I damn well please.
Well, there's no teeth if somebody wants to fight.
Well, and that, I mean, that's a fundamental question. Do we want teeth? And to me, the shall is a bridge too far, you know, and I sort of feel like, you know, the market is going to be somewhat self-regulating, because if you have a building where someone paints it some god-awful color, you know, people are going to go, I'm not going to shop at your store. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's going to attract weirdos and they're going to make tons of money. I don't know. But it just, if you have a design review process where someone's coming in here and we're looking at the bulk, the mass, how the color fits together, I'm all good with looking at the color as a component of that. But if some guy goes out and just repaints his storefront, I don't know.
I'm torn because the property rights part of me says, well, you know, you have the right to paint it's like a free speech. You can paint it, you know, hot pink if you want. On the other hand, it's part of our responsibility here is to maintain the character of the town and to try to make things that are, you know, that make Sierra Madre part of what Sierra Madre is. And, you know, last time I checked, there are not a lot of hot pink buildings in Sierra Madre, and so it would stand out and it would cause a certain amount of consternation and, emotional problems.
To tack on to that, like, I do a lot of work on the west side, and so there are these really cool old brick warehouse, like, work loft spaces that have been converted, old buildings, hangars that have been converted. And on some of the major thoroughfares, sides of those buildings, commercial buildings, are beautiful graffitied murals of various mix of earth tones and natural colors. I mean, just beautiful, like, tagged murals, on the whole facade. And that was part of the business's design palette. I mean, it was intentional.
Part of their branding.
Yeah, part of their branding, part of an extension of who they were,
Right.
You could get somebody to come and do, a wall section like that right on Baldwin or Sierra Madre Boulevard. And I would be a betting person and say that a lot of people would have trouble with that, digesting that. So, as much as we're saying, like, well, we want people to have the freedom to do what they want, we want to make it easy for commercial business to occupy this, and if they want to paint their thing bright pink or do an artist, mural on the front facade, have at it. But, like, the problem is, if we have nothing on the back end to say, well, that's a step too far, like, that's not what we had in mind. Oh, well, we can't do anything about it. Like,
Artists like to do that to you anyway.
and it totally fits in, well, it's free speech. It's what we can, like, we're free. That's our freedom to do that. So how do you
Balance the
balance
two.
that,
Well,
I have a suggestion.
Good.
Maybe it's just as simple as changing the very first sentence, which says materials, colors, and textures generally should be compatible. I strike the generally should and just say shall be compatible. It doesn't mean exactly the same. It just means we think it fits in.
Yeah.
And then the following language can stay the same. It can be more advisory or open, because the real point is that we really are going to require whatever you do to be compatible with, with the neighborhood.
And to add to that, you like helped my thinking when you were talking about graffiti done with primarily naturalistic colors, and also what you said about avocado green. The thing that really hangs me up is just the term earth tone, which is really a drag. But what if you took out, do what you're suggesting, and then just change that earth tone and natural colors to naturalistic colors?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
What's naturalistic?
What do you
As
want?
opposed to unnatural colors?
I think you would say, well, I think you'd say a natural color palette or something, or natural colors.
Something like that, okay, which would bring in all of the greens.
Keep the day glows out.
Yeah, I would. I mean, that's fine.
Keep the day glows
I
out.
think earth tone is, that's that phrase you have, but generally speaking, in our world, earth tone and natural colors means sort of not just like dirt colors, but that breadth of, a natural palette of colors, like from earth to sky, kind of thing. So,
Colors found in nature.
but if that word is like a hang up, I think you could just strike that and say natural colors are encouraged. I mean,
No, we want room for the Grand Canyon at sunrise.
yeah, that's fine.
This is naturalistic.
Yeah.
Do you want the second sentence of the?
No, I don't think, I don't, but,
Okay, I'm fine with.
and I think what, city attorney mentioned, I think is perfect. I think that first, because really that first part's the language. This second stuff is kind of a qualifier or like a little.
These are examples
Yeah, it's
of
more of
what
an
we're talking
insight
about,
into
yeah.
what we would like or prefer, whether you follow it or not.
We all good with that?
Well, so let's read through.
Provided yes.
Yeah, so what we have is materials and colors. Materials, colors, and textures shall be compatible with those of adjacent and other nearby buildings and the overall character of the downtown area. The use of traditional building materials such as tile, textured concrete, color-tinted concrete, decorative masonry, brick, river rock, wood siding, and stucco is encouraged. Natural colors are encouraged. Use of decorative and permeable paving materials is encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
We're all good? Okay.
Bill, you good with that?
Yeah, sorry, I kind of came in a little bit late on the conversation. I just, they have options though, if there's something like day glow that they could come and get. I mean, if it fit, if there was a real need for it or some kind of, you know, that they have the option to come and like come before the commission and ask for an exception to it. Would that all, is that door open with this, even though these are sort of development standards, or is there, does that make it more difficult?
It really isn't presently. If somebody came in and wanted to do a creative sign permit, maybe we would consider a mural as some kind of creative design. That is something that we can bring forward.
Mm.
But I mean, if it's part of a discretionary permit,
We would have.
we're going to look at it anyhow.
Right,
And if they suggest it,
Yeah, I'm just saying, this is great for the overall standards, but sometimes exceptions become,
Well, compatible is, when you're talking about design, use of color, use of exterior cladding, and that it needs to be compatible with your neighboring properties, that is a huge subjective area. It doesn't mean exactly the same. We could be very conservative and say you have to look just like your neighbor. That's what we think compatible means, but that's not the meaning of compatible. So I do think that you have room with the given application, for the applicant to show you why his or her use of some bright color somewhere is actually compatible
Right.
with the character of the neighborhood or the, and they
And-
might be able to do it.
and in our design review findings, we actually have a long discussion of what compatibility means. And it doesn't mean just copying or
right,
the
if
same.
it's
So,
defined elsewhere, that's fine,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
okay.
So then if these standards are directing this question to you, Vincent, if this standard is also applicable to the people who you have to speak with at the counter, how will staff handle these kinds of issues based on this proposed language?
Actually, we had a similar exercise, and what we ended up doing was, what is earth tone and natural colors, and went to Google and looked at all the various palettes.
Yeah.
And it's a whole range of colors. It's not just restricted to the basic beige and the typical earth tone colors and grays and browns. So I think staff is going to give a little bit of latitude to the person who's coming to the counter, and we're certainly just going to go ahead and look at that and see if this is something that's going to achieve some compatibility or some creativity to the downtown area.
That's very interesting. Your staff went and opened up information on Google,
Mhm.
and you actually saw like less restrictive, more
Right.
more open than just something that was very restrictive,
Right.
brown and beige, and it all worked out in the end.
It did. The sample, I think it did, is Lucky Baldwin's,
Ah,
the
which
example.
has some bright reds on it.
Yeah.
And I think look.
And it wasn't a pure bright red. It's there's a little bit more a muddled tone to it, but it's still fairly prominent.
Did Wells Fargo come and ask you before they put a yellow band around?
Yeah, that is an issue when you're confronted with a corporate identity program that is using colors like Valero, right?
I know.
Or Wells Fargo, but that's very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, so we've reached consensus on that, so let's go on to C3.
C3 was we took out some details that we thought were restricting. In V, we'll need diagrams for view preservation. Hint, hint.
Which one was that?
V.
OV.
In E, we'll just steal the ones from R3. But in F, the views, we'll need
Oh, F.
You
That's
got
the
two,
second story.
two E's there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we do. That's a good catch.
They're
We'll
just
change that.
bump those?
Yeah. Let's see, in the next page, 1736-050C, this was a text cleanup because it was ambiguous whether residential had to be put in. So it was, we're just saying if there's mixed-use projects, you have to segregate the
Mhm.
two uses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's see. And the next one is a while back on page 9B, that's,
I did have one question
yes.
before that, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
We had probably a lengthy discussion on 1736-080,
Yeah, the coverage.
the coverage.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering if, I thought where we had arrived was if it was under 500 square, we weren't going to have this be applicable. And I didn't know if we needed to insert that language particular to this section, or if the part at the beginning of the chapter covered all of it.
Because they don't need because that would just be a building permit.
Yeah.
I think that was the understanding, right?
What is the first part, general, where yeah, that covers the whole chapter, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, new construction additions and building alterations.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay.
And then, where were we? 1736-100B was some word choice issues. C was getting rid of an example that was causing ambiguity. And then moving to page 10, 1736-130 is hours of operation. We cleaned up some of the language, and then we also included the differentiation between Friday and Saturday. Since we did this update, though, I'm thinking about the hours of operation at the last meeting for the cocktail license. I was wondering if we really want to have a thing where there's a difference between 11 and midnight on Saturday and Sunday. Because the way we have it now is if you want to stay open later than 10 Sunday through Thursday, you need a minor. And then if you want to stay open later than 11 on Saturday or Friday or Saturday, for 1 hour to midnight, you need a minor. And then any day past midnight. It seems to me maybe we're overly complicating it, and we should just say you could stay open until midnight on Friday and Saturday.
I think that's clear.
Because it's like we're going to have an entire procedure just to get 1 hour on 2 days. That seemed really...
So I was looking at it the other way. So you're saying actually push it back from 11 to midnight?
Yeah, on Friday and Saturday only.
With a permit.
No,
No, without?
He's saying,
no
yeah.
permit.
Oh,
So
without permits?
If you want to go past midnight on any day,
You need a-
full
you need a
CUP.
Okay, good.
But if you want to go past 10 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday, you need a minor CUP. But it's almost like what we're saying is we automatically grant the minor CUP for Friday and Saturday night.
I'd be in favor of that for another reason also, and that is that if you're a business owner and you want to adjust your hours based on whatever kind of business consideration, and if you want to go say from 10:30 to 11:30 or something like that, do you have to go through a process just to make that kind of adjustment? Why don't we just leave that much more flexibility for the building owner too, without having to show up here?
The question I have that's not directed to anyone in particular, but what time does the Buck close?
I would have no idea.
Honestly.
You mean you're not interested in who's
No one wants to
regularly
admit
there,
it.
right?
Didn't it
It's gotta
close
be,
at 2?
it's gotta be 2, right?
It closes at 2. Now, do they have how is it that they can do that?
Well, because we didn't have an hours of operation. I don't know if the Buck has a CUP that figures that out. I mean, this clearly says no business established after the date of this chapter. So this would only apply to new. And the other thing is, if you're doing a bar, you need a CUP.
Right?
So you're gonna come before us anyhow, and so if you want later hours, you would say, look, I want blah, blah, blah. So this is really gonna be for,
Future businesses.
it's gonna be like bean towns.
Restaurants and,
Small restaurants that don't wanna serve alcohol.
So you bring up an interesting point. If you're a business that already has a CUP that has more limiting hours than this, you would have to come back before us to get that CUP changed,
to
or it would
expand.
be non-enforced.
I would think so, but in my understanding, I don't think I think it very rarely, I should say, that we've put hours of operations in CUPs. I think that's a pretty more recent thing.
It is very recent.
It used to be, we just said, yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want.
Or we would ask the police chief what hours they were open. We've had done that because we were not aware and we weren't good judges, and this is kind of why I bring this up. We weren't good judges of what transpires after probably 10:30 in this town, except for, and, when as responders, we kind of knew what was going on, but, if some places are open later, maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't want everything open as late. But I guess we are the authority to decide that. Okay? And
But I mean, if they had restricted hours as part of their CUP, that's less than what we're proposing here.
Yeah, they would have
Seems like
to-
they should,
They'd have to come back before us,
Yeah.
or it just wouldn't be enforced.
Right.
That's what's more likely to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, the issue is exactly what we said, code enforcement.
Code
is-
enforcement wasn't here at the meeting, and they, they don't know. Unless somebody complains.
I think we have generally speaking, we have the opposite problem in this town. But people want to compare us to, say, Montrose and complain about our rolling up the sidewalks here too early, especially on weekends. We're really talking about a very, very small number of businesses and maybe some past issues like too much noise on East Montecito and so
Right,
forth.
right.
But generally, there isn't a real problem in this town.
Yeah, and you saw the last time, the Sierra Fusion is open till 9. They don't, even on weekend nights, so it's.
Yeah, I think that's an elegant change. Adding it.
Okay, we all are comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine.
That's the changes on this one. Let's see the other,
Commercial zone?
the manufacturing zone, the change, I think we just had one little change about, food processing.
yep, saw that.
So we can grind coffee beans?
So we can grind coffee beans but not have a slaughterhouse is the,
Yeah.
that's attachment D. Yeah, attachment D, the first page,
Right.
1740-010, permitted uses. We'd extended the bakeries and the bakeries, coffee roasters, commercial kitchens, and other food processing and production facilities. And then when we discussed it, we had some concerns that maybe that's too broad. And so we added the language excluding slaughterhouses, rendering plants, or other facilities that the director determines are likely to emit foul odors or create other nuisances.
In reading that one more time, as you scroll down a little further, there's a section, or a line item for storage space for transit and transportation equipment, except freight classification yards. And it was unclear to me what a freight classification yard was.
Train, like a freight.
I have no idea.
That goes back to
Train,
when,
railroad.
many, many years ago on East Montecito. In fact, you can still see the vestige of where the freight line ran through there. Where you see the property divisions on the diagonal.
Right.
Like on the north side of
Uh-huh.
Montecito. There was manufacturing, there was fruit processing and so forth, and there were
Train.
there were freight trains that used the same or the same as the
red car line?
The red car line. And I don't know whether it was a different freight hauler or whether the red car also did this, but I think a lot of that language goes back to to the period of time when we had manufacturing, we had pottery manufacturing,
Right.
and there's some, there may still be some lead issues in the ground as a result of that. There was lumber delivery there.
So without
Well,
without the train lines, is that something that we should?
Well,
get
I-
right?
Yeah,
I-
come
I
on,
think-
guys.
I think it's not gonna hurt to leave it in for
Okay.
now. I mean, I just, the problem is,
We're not trying to get
the
into
problem
this,
is
right?
this thing is a mess, and if we go
Okay.
into here,
Because the line above it
Never
too
get
was
out.
kind of like, I had a big problem with that because
There were quite
I'm
a
really
few of these.
personally into warm mix soap, you know, and this is only allowing cold mix.
see, this is when there's one guy who wants to roast coffee. We try to help him out, and then we can't handle slaughtering rabbits, and then we open
It's
a
a rabbit
Pandora's
hole.
box. Yeah, it's,
It is
there you
a
go.
And previously pulverized clay.
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Well, apparently pulverizing clay is a big deal. These are issues that who
Who knew?
about? Yeah. So those were the changes from what we had before, and then we can get on to the use issues.
Are we okay with those changes? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I guess.
But I mean, going back real quick, just to stop here, part of that change we made was directly impacted by, was there a case where somebody wanted to process nuts or something?
Yes.
And the code basically,
Yeah, they wanted to.
They couldn't get a
They
CUP.
wanted they wanted to roast coffee beans.
okay, that's,
Right.
so in some sense, I mean, some of this is silly, but, I mean, we'll probably come back to this, I would
Right,
assume.
right.
because-
There was one guy who wanted roast coffee beans, and there was also someone who was doing like jams and jellies.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear whether that qualified under a fruit packing house or not, but I guess they just did it. And so the idea was to say, okay, well, we don't want to attack this section
Okay.
now, but we know there's one person who actually wants to do it, so while we're here, we'll
Got
just
it, I see.
accommodate.
So this is lower on the priority list to come back to and.
Yeah, well,
revisit.
this is like a land war in Asia, I think. There's been 3 specific plants that have died on East Montecito, so.
Thank you.
It's an apt reference.
Fantastic reference.
All right.
Okay, getting back to uses. So, on page 2 of the clean, I don't know what parts you want to look at, but 1736.020, this is the chart that allows for the uses. And so, the concept here was, before, we had a laundry list of uses that either fit into 2 categories, permitted or CUP. And so we made 2 big overhauls. One is that we tried to make them into categories instead of the laundry list, and then offloaded the laundry list so that it could be updated at staff level. So things like Pilates studios can be added in without having to do a code amendment. The second is that instead of just having everything be either permitted or CUP, we now have 3 categories: permitted, minor CUP or CUP, and then also we can vary that based on the size and location of the business. So one of the issues is that we talked about is the storefront. What's the term for that? Prime storefront area, which is 50 feet back. So that we can regulate separately when we get to office uses or others. And then also, because we're causing a lot of small businesses right now to get full CUPs, we can say, look, small businesses we're just not going to worry about. And so that's sort of the concept. And then so if you want to go down through the list, and then we can also refer to the commercial uses, which is things that were in here before that we took out and put into this separate detailed list.
I think this is a good addition because there's an advent of artisanal products where people are making small batch and small whatevers. And a lot of times when we look at manufacturing, we think of something giant and more industrial. And, like the coffee beans, we were not going to get Maxwell House in the town, but somebody wanted to do it on a smaller level. And I think that the time that time has come, and it should be encouraged.
You're absolutely correct about that. we have to really be able to make the distinction here between what goes back to 19th, early 20th century Sierra Madre, when it was an autonomous city, like I was talking about a few minutes ago, and the new wave of artisan products that's out there. And we've always we've liked the idea at Sierra Madre of having that kind of artistic presence, and so yes.
Right,
definitely.
and the follow on that is, one of the big issues that we've had as we move from an autonomous city to sort of just a part of a much bigger metropolis is that everyone said, well, just down the street there's a mall, so we're not going to compete with the mall on most retail sales. But now there's Amazon, so we're even going to compete less on just sort of everyday retail products. We're not going to have
Brick and mortar,
your sundry sales stores. So it has to be artisanal, interesting, different kind of thing crafts kind of stuff. And so hopefully we can attract those, and we can do it without requiring the 2,000 square foot little store to have a full CUP.
Amazon doesn't compete with the artisans very well, because they're kind of counter to each other.
But ST does, and so that's that's the problem. There are other options out there. So whatever we can do to encourage that kind of, because that is something else that fits in Sierra Madre.
Yeah, even SD kind of fails the touchy-feely, requirement that a lot of people have when they're in this kind of market.
So, like, your general, like, groupings is like retail sales. What are those items? Are those subcategories?
Right,
or-
so basically we have, the first line is the general rule of, and those retail, and then all of those retails, that examples are going to be in the commercial use list that the director maintains.
Yeah, but I'm sure the list has way more than what's
Right,
here.
it does.
How do
So
these get to this
The other
list?
ones are ones that we regulate differently than the general rule.
Okay.
And so the general rule on retail that we settled on was it's permitted if it's under 2,500 square feet. It's a minor conditional use permit for 2,500 to 5,000, and then a full CUP for 5,000
Okay.
or more.
So the
But
other,
alcoholic beverage sales, full
Different.
CUP. And it doesn't matter if you're doing packaged liquor like a mini mart, or if you're serving beer and wine at a restaurant.
got it, okay.
But
But like glass repair shops, it gets really specific.
some
so-
of the, and the other part is we tried to work with what we had.
Oh,
Maybe
that's the language.
maybe we should just kill some of this stuff. But as a subcommittee, we didn't want to do that before we brought it to the
Okay.
full committee. So yeah,
Why are glass repair shops singled out?
Well,
The
that's a little-
silvering, some of the process has hazardous materials.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And you do want to limit the amount of toxic materials that are in town.
But is a repair shop really a repair shop is almost like very small manufacturing in the sense of they're working with certain materials, they're fixing things, they're fabricating, things like that. Is that really a retail sale? Like, that's the end customer. A glass repair shop is
Well,
akin
it's
to
like
like an
there's-
auto body shop.
right. But there are a number of those in town. There's like the one that's I forget the name
Right,
of the
Taco
window.
Next to
Fiesta.
Tacos
Right behind,
Ensenada, yeah.
I was gonna
Or
say
wait,
behind
sorry.
KFC.
Tacos Ensenada.
Tacos Ensenada. I apologize.
And so they fix mirrors. So that's where you get the silver.
But you can also, if there's also a retail establishment where you can buy.
Right.
Okay.
So let me ask this question: for them to do the silvering, is there other licenses that they have to apply to from the state to handle those kind of materials? Because one of the elegant things I liked about the adult section was it said that this definition shall exclude any use preempted by state law or licensed by the state. So if we leveraged that kind of a definition to require a CUP, can we control toxic materials that way? That's what I'm asking. Rather than singling out a certain one.
Like if they have a DOT 704 sign on their, what does that mean?
So if you get these silvering agents, is it something that's federally regulated or DOT regulated or regulated in some way, shape, or form that we could rely on that as a trigger to come before us.
Because that would cover, that would cover a lot of
I think that's,
situations that perhaps we can't foresee.
And then we don't have to be glass repair shop unfriendly in Sierra Madre.
There's another aspect to that also, and that is, do glass repair shops actually engage in silvering where the, it's like friable and non-friable asbestos, right? Or and there's a lot of lead paint
So-
around that.
so
You
the
mean
sil-
you're saying like eco-friendly silvering?
But no, I'm saying, does anybody really do
Artisanal.
silvering in the process
Yeah,
of like
well, that's a
retail
good
glass
Is
repair?
that even relevant?
Every time I deal with the guy over here, he just orders from some remote source the
it shows
stock
up.
that I need anyway, and he cuts it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the
They're
other
not-
thing we could do, I mean, I don't know how much detail you want to try to figure out glass repair shops. We could just include glass repair shops in general retail and then say excluding silvering. 'Cause I don't, my guess is we're probably not going to get a lot of silverings. I don't know.
but going back
Yeah.
to Tom's point that, okay, if it's regulated by some other entity, or if it falls under the authority of some other regulatory agency. So right across from that glass shop is the Panatorium Cleaners, and that has a 704 sign because they had chemicals on site. And I'm not sure how we would trigger that. In other words, we know from fire inspections that they have they have DOT guidelines, and if so, the logic is that if the DOT sign is up, then it is being regulated by some other entity other than the city of Sierra Madre.
That wasn't, so I don't know. I appreciate that we don't want too many silvering chemicals here in the city of Sierra Madre, but in the grand scheme of things, I think we'd be hard pressed to keep them out if they wanted to come in. I just don't think we present a great opportunity for them to come in.
Yeah.
I think that what I was more after is, I think the spirit of what we're trying to do is limit truly dangerous things, right?
Yes.
We can't rely on the DOT placards because if I'm
They
a
don't have to put them up.
they don't have to put them up, and if I am one of
Until they're
these
caught.
gastropub chefs that likes to use frozen nitrogen pellets, am I going to now be regulated by something else? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you use something that you have to apply for some special hazardous material permit, that you should have to come before us first, and that the rest, I'm fine with moving it as an exclusion. But
Yeah,
I
because-
don't think we should call out things that can't be here by industry, because I think we're going to run the risk of missing them or
And
singling
there's going to be
somebody out.
Bob, your example is perfect. In that example, the dry cleaner falls under retail sales general.
No, dry cleaner is under high-intensity service establishments.
Okay, but they pretty much have, the same. I mean, they're just area based, square footage based, right? If it's
Well-
under 2,500.
No, if you switch the next thing to the service establishments, you can see we cut these into sort of ones that have potential for issues, and they need all of them need a minor CUP no matter the size, and that's dry cleaning, catering, some other.
Well, I mean, you still could run into this where a retail sales business, has hazardous materials of some sort. I don't know what that would be, but let's say this.
Well, there's
some-
a lot in
some sort of
Arnold's.
mastic or
There-
who knows what.
There are a
right?
lot of things in Arnold's that, can hurt you.
Yeah, okay, so,
If they escape.
but that's a retail establishment, and it's got a different sort of threshold for how we review it and what they're required.
And they're different.
But yet the glass shop, because we're setting a different standard, so suddenly you have this incompatibility when one business could be using just as hazardous materials as the other. And, I mean, there's no way to know, but it's hard to then put a line in the sand and say, well, if you're silvering, then we're gonna do X. It's just too specific, I think.
Well, and that's the problem of our existing code, right? It's got this laundry list of stuff. And so if we can find an elegant solution that gets us out of that, that's great. I mean, what we have to deal with so far is we put glass shop sales only under retail sales generally. So if you're just selling like,
Mirrors.
Selling, reselling.
or you have the little glass bottles or whatever, you're just, and you're small, you don't need a CUP at all. But if you're doing edging, beveling, silvering, or staining, you need a
Pairing,
CUP.
yeah.
In support of this argument, that is we're trying to encourage different types of artisans, and you know, and they generally are going to be doing the work where they're selling, so their process is going to be in town, not just their showroom, right? Because that's not how artisans work. There could conceivably be some different glass processes like silvering that a stained glass artisan is using, different kinds of chemicals that are used for glazes in ceramics.
And you were onto something, because usually that the regulatory agency looks at quantity before it kicks into certain
Their
regulatory
thresholds.
agents. So if they operate under a certain quantity, my problem is, how does staff get the message from the regulatory agency that this is in existence? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it would require that staff have that whoever the regulatory agency for the business is swings by City Hall and say, did you know that we have X amount of stuff here? And I'm not sure that happens. Usually, in a perfect world, it happens when the fire department goes out and does their inspections. But I'm not even sure.
Yeah, ABC is one of the only organizations that actually reaches out proactively and says, I want to see your CUP for this location. Right?
And that's the one we get to see.
And that's
Yeah,
the
it's
one-
kind of like we're out of our element here in a way.
Well, we can create something that we can't enforce, or we can create something that staff can't execute because, you know, they don't hear about whatever they don't hear from the regulatory agency.
Or maybe we're creating trouble that just shouldn't be there
Doesn't
because we're
exist.
trying to legislate about something that we ought to stay out of.
I don't know whether we should stay out, but I think that I'm pretty sure that I've remembered this glass shop from every time we've done this in the last 10 years. This is a legacy
Right.
line item.
But like, if you took that line item and just jettisoned the glass part and just said, like, could it be something like retail or repair shops that utilize any amount of, you know, hazardous in their processing or repairing, that we want to see that, you know?
So
I don't know how we would know, but if someone came to the counter and said, I want to at this location, I want to open a, you know, stained glass window repair
we already have one.
shop.
We have
you
one in
know,
town,
and
actually.
we're going to use, like, you know, lead filler and all kinds of stuff, you
I
know?
want to make hats. I have Quicksilver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would that trigger, would that then say, okay, I mean, obviously that would put the onus on staff to know these sort of businesses
But the
have
other thing is,
potential to have.
are those people going to see that? I mean, my guess is they just open, and a lot of times that kind of thing might not even be thought of when they open the business, right? They might expand their business into that, and so maybe we're talking more of a code enforcement issue, that it just gives the city the ability to have some code enforcement if we get complaints or issues. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is in place in case, when they come to you to open up, and they say, we want to open this business, do you ask them about hazardous materials and those kinds of things? How are they regulated?
If there was something coming into the manufacturing zone, they're actually manufacturing something, we'll probably question them a little bit more. But if it's something, a glass repair shop in downtown, probably not. Unless during the course of conversation, they start offering information, then we might start asking other questions.
Yeah, that puts the city at a kind of a disadvantage
Right.
on understanding that.
Well, I think, you know, I think there's two things we can do. One is we can look into the concept of hazardous materials licensure from other departments, state, county, or whatever, and see if we can try to add something. With regard to glass repair shops, like I said, it used to be a CUP. If you think a CUP is too drastic, we could treat it like home improvement stores, where we require a minor CUP if it's under 5,000, and
I had questions about that one too. Is that just a legacy thing, or
I think the issue is there's paint, there's bug killer, you know,
Yeah.
you sort of want to make sure they're not.
Like, have
know,
a big
stocking
thing of
up on nasty
malathion
stuff.
or something, you know? you know.
But
big
basically, all of these here that are listed separately, all were full CUPs before.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's
So
why
you're
we're
starting to parse it out.
That's why we're discussing it.
Yeah, I mean, Arnold's probably has a sufficient quantity of bug killers and all those other kinds of things you're talking about to be a
But I
problem.
can tell you that one of our moments on the fire department is when a guy opened a pool cleaning service and he stocked his garage full of pool chemicals.
Mm.
And we're going by and it looks like everything else. When we opened there was hundreds of gallons worth of bad stuff that you wouldn't want to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, in other words, it's a much broader problem if it wants to be than just our picking on.
And he had a business license to be a pool cleaner, but he wasn't inspected because he was in a more residential area. It was a garage.
Right.
And so the nexus between the chemicals and the business and this thing was not made. And so that may be more of a code enforcement issue.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I think we almost need to separate that as a separate section in the sense of, because even in the code, like hazardous materials, storage of it and utilization of it is it's a separate classification. You know, the building, how the structure has to be built, everything about it is how much area you can have, how many people can occupy it, all of that. I mean, in the building code is regulated, like if you're an H1 versus an S2, you know, storage, you know, with hazardous.
Yeah, that's why I think what we need to do is we need to add a section somewhere later that
says
says
hazardous.
notwithstanding anything else, no matter what use you are, if you have any of these materials, you need a C. I mean, and that's the problem is, you know, I don't really know how to draft that because I don't know the ins and outs of what those levels are. But at some level, you'd need at least a minor, and some level, you'd need a full CUP.
Yeah. It may be in that category. It's all, I don't know. You know, I mean, if you're dealing with any of this stuff.
But the problem is, you know, when you get to hazardous materials, it's like, some stuff you use in a copy machine might, you got a tiny bottle, but, you know, so
I mean, I think
it's also quantity.
Yeah.
And the problem with lists are the same problem that police have enforcing illegal substances.
Yeah.
Because
They go out of date in a heartbeat.
they'll change the formula by one atom and it's suddenly not a regulated substance,
yeah.
right? So I think that it would behoove us to take that away and chew on that part of it.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I'm in favor of this, just taking out the glass repair shop from here and putting the exclusion into the staff list. Is that what you recommended?
Well, already the staff list includes glass shop sales only.
Okay.
So you can do that. The question is, do we want to allow glass repair shops that do silvering and beveling? And my thought was, if you think a full CUP is too much, we could regulate it just like home improvement product store, whereas you need a minor for under 5,000 and a full CUP for.
I think that's fine.
I think that's fine.
I mean, the amount we'll be dealing with, like, it's not like.
Well, but say that again. I'm missing something here. We're going to do what with it now?
So
if you have a glass shop that's sales only,
it'll be the same regulations. as
that'll
that
just
one.
be a regular one.
Yeah.
But if it's a repair shop that does beveling, silvering, staining, then it would be treated like
As
a home
opposed to
improvement.
just taking that whole box out of there and then addressing it in a new later section like you would.
Well, I think we're
suggested
gonna
a minute ago.
we're gonna add a new later section that's generally about treatment of hazardous substances.
Yeah, and we could just knock that out. You know, you were talking about like, well, where's the difference between what we do and what the building code handles? Well, there are also issues, very similarly. What do we do versus what does the health department do for all of the restaurants that we regulate in other kinds of ways? We stay out of the health
Right.
department's business.
Well, I think some of these
there's-
issues are just there. There's the silvering is the issue of the hazardous materials, but there's also issues with perhaps the edging and the beveling that makes a lot of noise or something. And I think that's when you get down to pet sales. There's issues of odors and
Yeah.
noises. It's not just that.
Yeah,
that
well, it
cats
would
are
probably,
hazardous.
John, let me pose it a little proactively, then it would probably be, maybe we're hit or miss about some of these unctuous environmental things, just around in the code, but maybe it is time especially with increased environmental awareness, that we do have a section and address all of this stuff across the board, and that would also maybe give us the opportunity to really find out what's current, what's going on as far as these materials and their regulation by different agencies and so forth. We also don't want to get the city into trouble because we've created some kind of regulations that may be
Yeah, I was gonna,
to like a state reg.
I was gonna see if staff had any suggestions or insights into what other cities are doing in that narrow area in terms of how those kinds of businesses are regulated.
I have actually not come across that. We
And
could
so-
do research and look at other city codes and see if they have anything that they reference.
And the fact that you haven't come across that is maybe an indication that we've gone down an odd road here, and we are obsessing over things that are already codified by other regulatory agencies, or maybe there's an answer out there. I'm not hearing that we have a elegant solution for this,
Right.
and I think we need to
Yeah.
But I
ask
mean,
for more.
if we step back and kind of look at I mean, you guys have done an excellent job of bringing this down to general categories. I mean, if you look at it with one eye, you kind of have retail, alcohol, tobacco, pets, gun, and firearms. So these all make sense. You would want to talk about. I mean, I think right now, I don't think we jettison that glass repair. I think we leave it, but I think we go with, let's not put it in the all category, because I think that might be a step too far. I think having it split, based on the size of the business between the MCP and CP makes sense for now. If we want, I just don't want this thing to hold up the whole thing, So
The
That I
other
agree
thing
with.
we could do on this, just as a suggestion, is as we did in service establishments, we have general service establishments and then we have high-intensity service.
yes.
We could create a category here that's sort of more high-intensity ones and then put glass repair shops, home improvements, and pet sales, and that would allow staff to further augment that list without doing, instead of listing them here independently.
And just set them aside for further review. as
No,
it
they
were.
just fall into a sub,
Yeah.
Yeah, we take glass repair shops, home improvement, and pet sales, and we make them a subcategory, and then we put it on the list over here. And that way, we talked about this issue with scooters, because sometimes you have big batteries that have nasty goop in them, and, maybe that belongs on that list until the scooters are such that that's not a
They
problem.
don't catch fire.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
is it, does that all fit nicely under the service establishment category? Because you're basically gonna stick them under the high-intensity service establishment, right?
well, we could,
Or is it a
we
I
could
think he was saying
reserve, or we could
repair
add.
or-
High-intensity retail.
We could add a subcategory.
Okay, we like that.
Okay, and then, as we talked about, alcohol, guns, and tobacco,
That's fine,
the ATF ones, we all have full CPs. Okay, do we want to look through the list of the examples, or are we good on that?
Well,
Well,
that
did we
list
go,
is.
let's see, office uses, that's all fine, right? All,
So you're saying, do we want to go through these levels first and then visit the list?
Or do you want to
do
go,
you wanna-
like,
do you
retail
wanna-
and then look through this, or do you want to just?
no, I think we should go through, I don't know, I think we should go through this and see what we find in the broad stroke, and then
Okay,
the
I'm fine.
list will.
So office is, this is where we made a differentiation by location. So office uses outside the prime storefront area are permitted.
This is the first 50 feet, right?
Right, offices within the prime storefront area require a minor.
Yep.
And
that-
this was to keep us from having every single building being an attorney, an accountant,
Right.
or
Or
attorney,
somebody
accountant.
selling insurance on the sidewalk when we could have it as retail sales.
Retail or,
Yep.
or restaurant.
So it's basically encouraging retail
Correct.
because it'd be easier to get an office
Upstairs.
upstairs or in the back.
Right, so then service establishments, this is what I talked about, where we divided them between regular service establishments and high intensity, and it's the same thing where the high intensity ones require at least a minor, no matter where you are. And the high intensity ones are dry cleaning, catering, lodging, health clubs, medical offices, things like that. And then financial institutions, banks and whatnot, these are basically a lot like offices, but they have some retail, so we let those go into the, but because they're sort of boring, we don't ever require CUP even if it gets big. And, you know, maybe that's an issue too, if we wanted to do that more like retail sales.
Like size-based?
Yeah, size-based. But again, I think the thought was office, if it's not taking up the prime storefront area, don't care. I don't care if it's 10,000 square feet, as long as we get a look at the building, right?
Yeah, but I mean, this is one of those cases where, I mean, we can't predict the future, but even financial institutions, I mean, even if you take the last 30, 40 years, I mean, those brick and mortars have been shrinking, you know, to the point where I think our financial institutions will be like that Wells Fargo ATM, where you'll basically do everything, you know, any banking you want to do, you'd come into a kiosk and be done. Like, those places are shrinking. So I don't know if there's an issue of, you know, a home savings and loan that's 10,000 square feet popping up, you know, or something.
Right.
Those days are over.
I went and saw some space when I was looking for some new commercial space for a company, and there was a floor of a building locally, outside the city, that had been over-trafficked as a financial institution. They were, I forget if they were doing, it was seminars that were kind of financially based, and they were considered a financial institution, and they had really intensive high use at weird hours, and just tons of parking, nobody from that area. It was all drawing from a large, so my only concern was maybe capping it at, and even if it just started at the 5,000, because at a certain point, they've got to have enough room to have a lot of people there, but the financial institutions, depending on, while I agree that most of the footprints are going down on what we're used to, I was
Banks,
more
yeah.
concerned that, if you have a debit card, I won't name any of the local brands, but if you have a debit card and you want to sell those to people, that would be considered a financial institution, right? Because you're governed by a lot of those banking laws. And so you could attract an entirely different clientele, a cash-based clientele, to what is your financial institution. And so we may want to consider at a certain size having some oversight in that.
Well, do you have similar feelings about office? Because, I mean, the other thing is, you know, like those things might trigger an office too.
Yeah, but you were just talking about how there were really intensive seminars, like at odd hours. You know, an office that's more daytime hours wouldn't necessarily present the same issues in terms of noise and parking and so forth as a place that was having a seminar till 10:30 at night.
But it
But-
might be a case of like where, I don't know, but they could go in as an office use, and they've sort of taken liberal.
You bring up a good
what
point.
they're allowed to
Now,
do.
I don't know that we need to be auditing every single business that comes in. You're right.
And then you could also be, you know, they could be arguing that, well, we're educational, that we're not.
Right, and that comes in a different place.
That-
Are we
you're-
financial or are we
That's a fair point.
educational?
That
I think the other thing is, you keep in mind, this is the use regulation, not the building regulation, right? So you have to find the building that you're gonna occupy. If you're building a new building, obviously we're gonna do a design review on it, so.
right.
But I mean, we could say, you know, we've got retail at sort of 2,500, 25.5, and then 5 up. We could put office and financial, maybe double that. I don't know, go 5,000, 5 to 10, and 10.
I mean, do we even have like 10,000?
Well, it's probably not going to happen. You know,
No.
That size
no.
retail in the existing fabric would be. I mean,
I'm talking about
Take-
office.
even the bank at the corner, you know, the Chase space. I mean, that can't be more than 3,000. 2,500, I mean, it ain't that big.
Bank of the West, I think, is about 6,000.
That's a,
It's-
yeah,
it's
okay,
big.
yeah.
But the other thing, as you were saying about how they're shrinking, if you go in there, there's all.
Oh.
sorts of
Yeah, you could
space.
play racquetball in there and not disturb their process.
The Bank of America building, right?
Yeah.
Well,
the
that
Bank
too,
of
the
America
whole-
is- They don't even do second floor.
Yeah, what goes on in that
That-
second?
I think that's
Nothing.
just office.
It's just
offices.
shuttered or whatever.
For now.
For now, yeah. I don't have a problem with it, but my general understanding when we put financial decisions was basically retail banking, so.
Yeah, we
But if
got-
there's a lot of other stuff going on, then,
Banks, savings and loans, like we're gonna have a lot of those. Finance companies.
It was that last one, the finance company, that gave me pause
Mm.
with.
Okay. Education?
Okay, educational, this, outside the prime storefront, it's permitted up to 5,000 and minor above 5,000. If it's within, then it's, a minor for under 5,000, so it just switches up a bit. That's again to get these kind of concepts not taking up the storefront areas. Recreational and entertainment.
So are the traffic patterns in educational facilities closer to the high-intensity traffic patterns?
like
Yeah,
parking.
I think the issue with the educational facilities is they really depend.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what kind of thing it is, you know, and who it's catering to. Because a lot of them, if they're real sort of traditional education, it's more daytime stuff. But if they're supplemental education, then it's more programs for kids after school, or so then you get a lot of variability.
But we have the art education in Christine Court, and I'm not aware that their facility creates more traffic in that little, you know, causes any more of a problem in that court. So, you know, that's an example of I guess that would be listed as an educational facility. But perhaps because it caters to kids and they are dropped off and picked up, then it's not you know, they don't come with a lot of cars.
I was thinking more Masonic Lodge turns into a adult education facility, so at night,
You have a lot of
there's a ton of people coming there. That was more my concern as to whether or not the education facilities should have been more in line with the high intensity. But I can see both sides. of it.
But in this case, it's a use question, right? So you would have to have, like the park, to me, that would definitely go with like, okay, how all these people are gonna come at night. Is it the all these people coming at night using this facility, or is it the parking issue? Like, you know, if it's, because that would be regulated differently, you know, how are they gonna park, you know, class, if they're class of 50 people who are taking night classes or something.
But our only bite at the apple would be when they came for the use, right?
Yeah, if it's not a new building.
If it's not a new building.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, we're getting, times are changing. We're getting different kinds of uses and different kinds of uses in different facilities than we would have imagined, you know, when these things were first written. There's a lot
Right.
going on. And in some cases, you know, like you're talking about the art education thing in Kirsten Court. So, you know, we love the activity too. I mean, we're not really trying to regulate that. You know, it's pretty late. Walk around downtown late in the afternoon. It's pretty live.
Yeah.
But I
It
think
does-
your example in that case, I don't think that building is bigger than 5,000 square feet. So,
Masonic Lodge?
yeah, so it would be permitted.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
that
It
example.
doesn't sound like there's a lot of concern from the rest of the council, or the commission, so I'm.
Yeah, I think that the other thing is to the extent that it's not too far away from the Mariposa lot, there's probably going to be space.
And there's parking behind the Masonic Lodge. And they used to teach line dancing in there in the past, because it's the big floor. And it wasn't really a problem.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, there's
I
a
get
lot
you.
of parking behind it.
yeah,
isn't
there's
there?
a fair amount.
No, but there could
if
be
I can tell you
others.
for the kids stuff, and my daughter does dancing there, it's not a parking issue. It's all drop off. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But it's the adult one that's more of an issue. I think you're right on that. Recreation and entertainment facilities, these have a little bit higher regulation. These are bowling alleys, billiard parlors, circuses. well, I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of circuses, whatever the heck an indoor circus is.
Hey, Cirque du Soleil might come.
But also, this is without any service of alcohol.
Yeah.
So if one of these, like a billiard parlor wanted to serve alcohol, then it would need a full CUP.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Automobile stuff requires full CUP, 'cause
Excuse me, John, one
yeah.
second. I think it's more likely that a bar is going to put in billiard tables
Then the other way around.
than the other way around. So does this,
well, like, again.
do we
it-
regulate the bar when they want to put in a billiard table?
I mean, a bar's gonna have a full CUP, so,
To begin with, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so this becomes a different
yeah, we're
thing.
not gonna have an issue.
Okay,
there. This
good.
is, if you wanted to have a pool hall where you didn't serve booze, then you would need a mic.
Seems like an unlikely thing.
Well,
actually.
there you go. I think a circus is an unlikely thing, but, it's on the list, so,
Okay.
Here's just this is a nitpicky thing.
yeah.
When I look at all, from every city zoning things, like, if there's a way, I don't know if this table comes in as a drop-in, but if there's a title, it should go to the next page. Like, it should go with its,
Oh, yeah, right.
I mean,
yeah,
in the formatting,
Yeah. The thing about the formatting
or
is,
is it just a,
we give the text to the publishing company,
uh,
so I don't know that we have a lot of control over that.
So let's let it float right now while we're still editing. But you're right, it has to be picked up at some point.
So automobile?
Automobile is car wash, painting, auto repair, that's all full CUP.
Good.
Residential uses located outside the prime storefront area are permitted.
Okay.
They're not allowed in the prime storefront area at all.
yeah, that's what we talked about, like upstairs or behind.
Adult business, this language was carryover, so we didn't change it at all, but I understand from council that we could switch this to CUP if we want to.
You could, the way that, the question is, are the restrictions that exist already so limiting that it effectively restricts that kind of a business to a very small area of town anyway. And then there's the kind of the poison pill provision in those restrictions that say, if anything gets overturned or challenged or whatever, then full CUP.
So do you think the existing is sufficient enough to provide the control that the town is interested in?
Well, I
we-
think Vincent would have to tell me that by kind of mapping things out. I'm going to assume, and we're all going to assume for the sake of the record, that there's some place in town where an adult business could be located based on our criteria, which is you can't be, within a certain number of feet of a school, you can't be within a certain number of feet of any residential use, and you can't be within a certain number of feet, gotta go
Private
back
school
and
or
look.
academic education.
Yeah, school, residential, and there was one other I thought.
Church?
Yeah.
Church, that was it.
Well, the thing is, this was adopted in 2009.
Yeah, it's old.
And we haven't had any since, so,
It might be if it's not broken.
Yeah,
that's
that
right.
was
That's,
what I just-
okay, so it's sufficient is what we're saying.
It seems to have been, and if we were to get a request that, for a use that suggested that these restrictions are too strict or somehow not applicable, then there's that poison pill provision. Well, then then CUP
Okay?
with all these other, that's the way it was drafted.
I
Okay.
think we're good with that. These other uses are referring to the general list of CUPs that's in the discretionary permit chapter. I was thinking one thing we might want to do is take this out of this table and then add a section, like we did in R3, that just references the different uses that are allowed in other sections. So it's like signs, these CUPs, wireless places, so people know where to go to find those. Also group homes. that seems to be a better way than just sort of clunking it into this table.
That's housekeeping that you understand better than I do
Yeah,
in
that's
terms
what
of
we did.
referencing.
1728-075.
As long as when people go through all the list that is here, that they're not left dangling about, well, what about this or what about that? So if you can refer them over to another
Right, and
section.
that's exactly what we
That's
did in the R3, because it's easier to point them to it instead of trying to incorporate it, and then you get inconsistent.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, but we should take a look at 1760-030, which is the list of CUPs that you can do anywhere in the whole city. But do we want to go over this list of commercial uses first?
Yeah,
That-
probably,
yeah.
your counter list.
Yeah. So these,
That is,
that's exhibit
what exhibit?
I don't know what-
See,
C in this one, it was D last time.
C, okay.
So for the most part, these were just taken from the existing code. There were a couple places, like on glass shops, where we added glass shop sales only,
Sales
so
only.
to differentiate between the silvering one.
Mhm.
And then we can also add the one that's retail sales, high-intensity retail sales. But this is what we got.
What's, this is probably like before my time, I mean, notions or I know what sundries are, but notions, is that, what's notions?
I don't know what's on the list.
knickknacks.
I thought it was a
Knickknacks?
misspelling, like potions. Is that like just, yeah?
Potions and potions? I don't know.
For convenience store, did we want to put that disclaimer that it's excluded by anything preempted by state law or licensed by the state, just so that, I didn't know if because people associate sale of alcohol with convenience stores, that they might think that this is a way around it.
Well, that's why we tried to make the language of the alcohol and the tobacco more broad, where we said alcohol beverage sales, whether consumption on or on-site, and whether alone or in conjunction with any other
Okay,
use. And we used
fair
the
enough.
same language with tobacco, so that, hopefully we catch that. Because the other part is you could add, sales of those kind of things to a lot of different
Yeah,
kind of
true.
uses.
True.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty comprehensive, so.
And then, again, the whole concept of the categories, then, if something that's a little bit different than this comes in, staff get added in. And when there's something that's sort of in between these, staff can figure out if it's, service establishment or a retail sales.
Yeah.
Then the office uses, these are the way they were discussed in
Mail
the
order.
current code. Although I think we moved the mail order houses, internet sales, and e-commerce to this one.
To this section.
And then the next page with the services, the general service establishments and the high intensity, this is probably worth taking a look at to make sure, we've divvied these up the way we could move the nail salon to the high intensity because it has, nail paints and smells, or because we have too many. But this is where we put it for now.
In the service establishments and generally, we changing times, computer repair, Foothill Tech over on North Baldwin is a good establishment. Is there anything that would cover them?
Service establishment.
They're pretty low intensity in terms of the traffic, the activity.
I think it'd be service establishment general, right?
I'm very sympathetic to John's point that this is a opportunity for us to encourage and discourage certain kinds of businesses in town.
Yeah.
And while I'm not someone that gets their nails done a lot, we seem to have more than, per capita, seem to have a pretty good supply of nail salons.
Can you walk us through what your ideas were on the differences between service and high-intensity service?
Well,
Because to his point, I used to get when I had hair, I used to get it cut down on the boulevard, and people would be in there getting their nails done in the same place I was getting my hair done, and it took us relatively the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to understand the difference between strictly a barber shop versus a nail salon.
right.
as far
I
as
think
intensity.
generally what we did is things that required a CUP in the old code, we put as high intensity. And
Okay.
things that didn't, we put in service staff generally. And that's, that's the general gist. And then, so I think we might want to tease those through now to see where we want to put that. Joe, to your point about the computer stores, under retail sales, there's electronic stores, home and office, including repairs.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So, we could change that description to computer and electronic stores if you think that would.
I think it's covered. I'm sorry I went past that other one.
No, that's fine.
Well, I mean, it's funny to me because like restaurants, if you have these categories, high intensity services, that means it's either got a high turnover or the use is intense in terms of how they're utilizing it. High turnover and, like cooking, or there's a lot of transaction happening, in that space, versus, like a computer repair shop, they'll take it in and you'll come back a week later to pick it up kind of thing, or like your dry cleaning, drop it off and you leave,
Right. Dry cleaning also has the chemicals.
Yeah,
dry
yeah,
cleaning.
but like to me, when I see the title high intensity service establishment, that how intense is the use on that premises is how I look at it. Maybe the wording is not correct, I don't know, but to me, like, you look at the top list, which is service establishment generally, and then your high intensity service, I think like a restaurant would go in the high intensity to me, because to me that's a high intensity use of that premises. But if that's not the intention, you're trying to divide it up more based on other criteria, I don't know.
Yeah. I think part of the issue was that we have, the general plan talks about encouraging restaurants and that's like one of our best shots at actually having sales tax. And so sort of put that one in the top group. But maybe high intensity is the wrong name for it. Maybe it's service establishments that need more review. I don't know
Service
what the
establishment we don't want in town.
discourage service establishments.
Yeah, I mean, we're close to
find an
that,
elegant
guys,
term.
But therein lies some of what our concern is. What kinds of things do we want to encourage, and what kinds of things would we like to not see a lot more of?
Well, I mean, if we're playing,
Is this our opportunity to do that?
If we're gonna play those cards, then I think we know what those are, and we need to figure out how we can put those in a list that is fair in the sense of, we're not saying there's a higher bar to have that business here versus the bar is set a little more lower for these set of businesses because we don't have those and we would like that eclectic mix or diversity of business types and want to encourage that,
Yeah, but what happens if we're in effect doing a discriminatory kind of list
Zoning.
here, and I don't mean that in a bad way. So then when somebody is proposing a business, just think it through. When somebody's proposing a business that is on the discriminated against list, all right, or the the list that in effect is of the businesses that we really don't want to see that many more of in town. When they're here, what kind of questions do we ask them? When they're in front of us and they're trying to tell us about their business and make a positive pitch, what kind of questioning then can we really use? What kind of findings could we possibly be making that would tease this out? I mean, is it so discretionary a process that it's all about discretion and nobody can question any issues of fairness? That it can really be done on the,
No.
legally on the basis of we don't like you, get out of here?
No.
Well, okay,
The thing
then
is,
think it all the way through.
but
Where does that go?
the findings that we have are the CUP findings. And whether it's a minor CUP, which would be in this, or CUP, the findings are very similar. And so, you know, you have the issues of compatibility, nuisance type things like noise or fumes or smells, and also proximity and need for the use.
And what about things that we may just not like for one cultural reason or another?
Well, there's nothing in
Like
the
a
finding that
tattoo
says we
parlor
don't like you. I mean, you know,
No, we have to be able to articulate what the
Yeah.
finding is, and if we woke up tomorrow and there were 5 nail shops next to each other on the boulevard,
Yeah,
would we not say that maybe the use and intensity has exceeded, you know, the demand in town and what we want to see from this town? I mean, because quite honestly, one of our responsibilities is to help sculpt the way the town is going to be, you know, 5-10 years from now.
I'm not trying to sound like ACLU here, all right? But I am really, I really am interested in the whole issue of how we tease this out.
no,
when
no,
it's
this
really-
is an important
when
issue
it's
because
before us.
it-
Like tattoo parlors, there really aren't any in town that I know of. Maybe there's 1 or 2 around, but you know, we don't want to look like the strip in you know, at Venice, and in all likelihood.
But I think there are mechanisms in place. It's a lot like our earlier discussion on you know, adult businesses. Like there are enough, aside from the CUP requirement, like, you know, there may be a radius distance like 500 feet or 500 yards or whatever it is. Like if there's a nail salon here at the corner, you know, the next one better be, you know, 1,000 feet away. I don't know. Or, you know, you can't have 5 in a row, you know, lined up. There are other zoning requirements that would, I think, be better tools to regulate the mix of businesses, you know, and what we get, than to say, you know, we can't say like, well, we don't want those kind of businesses here. I think you've got to have real reasons to justify why those businesses can or can't exist, you know.
right, and
so,
that's what we have CUP findings for.
yeah.
Okay, well, I haven't been through the CUP process with, you know, on this as a member of this commission before, so I really, with the contemporary questions that were contemporary issues that we're raising about the businesses in town, do you all feel as though the findings, the required findings as they are right now, will handle this okay?
Well, yeah, I think so, and I think the findings are specific enough and objective enough that if we have a over concentration of use, we could use that as a reason, but we can't use we just don't like you, or you're the wrong ethnicity, or anything like that. I mean, that's just not going to fly. And you know, I can read you the findings if you want, but A is that the site for the proposed use is adequate in size, shape, topography, and location. The
Yeah,
site
right,
has
sure.
sufficient access to streets. The proposed use is neither detrimental to the public health, safety, or general welfare, nor unreasonably interfere with use, possession, and enjoyment of surrounding and adjacent properties. Now, that's going to go into smells, sounds, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, whether the general populace here, would that include whether the general populace here thinks that it's an untoward use?
Well, I don't think we get untoward there. I think it's more an issue of if you're going to be grinding mirrors all day and it's going to make an unholy racket, you know, that's a problem. Or if you have a pet store that's not got proper care and due care for
Ventilation.
the, you know, yeah, the smells. The next one is there's a demonstrated need for the use requested, and that's one of the ones where we could get into if there's an over concentration. The proposed use is consistent with general plan zoning and other applicable codes. Well, that's pretty obvious. And the use at the location requested would benefit the public interest and convenience. So there's, you know, I mean, I think those are reasonable, and those CUP findings are pretty standard. I mean, when we recently updated these, we compared them to other cities, and this is, if not verbatim, pretty dang close. You know, this is, as council can tell you, this is what CUP findings look like in other cities. So this is a pretty standard review.
You know, to put it another way, I mean, sort of if you look from the side, when we look at projects in the residential area, Joe, Bob will attest to this, because he said this as chair several times. People will come to us, and we're looking at the findings, and, you know, they'll almost beg us to help them design their project. And Bob will even mention it, I said, boy, they're getting some, free design advice here. I mean, we're not forcing them to do it that way, but they're sort of asking us, because they themselves within the findings are sometimes stumped as to what it is we're sort of looking for. So in trying to describe it, we don't say, well, we'd like a craftsman house or a Spanish style house. It doesn't come out that way. So usually within the findings, we work that out. It's never discriminatory. In fact, the flip side is they're almost asking us how they can accommodate what we're asking for in the findings, because they're so broad and subjective.
I think one other thing to keep in mind as we try to balance, what hoops we want what businesses to go through is generally, because we've separated the regulation of construction from the regulation of use, we've drastically reduced the level of regulation on the use. So all of these that are that we put in the high intensity service would now, for under 5,000, which is going to be almost everything in town, is going to require a minor CUP. They currently require a full CUP. So to do a catering service or a dry cleaner or a health club, you need a full CUP in town now.
Which is expensive and very time consuming.
And so, yes, we're not giving them as much relief as, a locksmith shop, but we're actually reducing the burden, the regulatory burden on these uses.
Yeah, just fine.
Okay. So, point of clarification, did we move nail salon into high intensity? Was that
I thought there was a discussion. I didn't.
final, was that what we landed on? Are we okay?
Well, yes, I would be for that, but I have a little problem with the way we categorize this. Like, to me, high intensity goes to the type of business it is, the use.
Impact.
The impact. So maybe we've just termed it not the right way, I don't know, but like, to me, nail salon would not be a high intensity use. It's a retail service use.
Well, that's where this whole discussion started.
Yeah, I know, but like, on the flip side, I think a restaurant goes
Should be
there,
in
but
high
I know
But
we're
Yeah,
trying to
but-
make less hoops.
But to be clear, I mean, about the potential impacts of a nail salon, when I eat at the French place in town, the crepe store, I always eat inside.
Because you
when
can
you
smell
sit
it.
outside, the fumes from the neighboring nail salon all come over. So there are impacts, and so I think high intensity is the wrong term.
Okay.
We need a better term here of that, but basically we mean service establishments we want to take a little more look at. And what that's not the term we're
Well,
gonna
I
use,
mean,
but we have to have
Instead of high intensity, like impacted uses or something, impacted meaning like this type of business has some ancillary impacts or effects that need to be considered.
there's a-
It could be odor things, it could
Yeah.
be,
There's a concept like this, I know in Pasadena code, where they have a category of,
what do they term it?
I don't remember, but I could go hunt that up and
Yeah,
see.
we can,
So I think it's that
let's
bold
fish-
line.
Let's
that's-
fish for a better, but we understand that the high intensity is something that we probably want to rephrase. But we understand what it means to us.
Yeah.
No, I think we all have a different definition of what it means to us, and I think we need to understand what that
Well,
word's gonna
It's
be in
not-
order to help
well,
clarify these, because I
we
don't.
mean it, we don't mean high intensity in terms of, because you are correct, it's intensity implies a use as opposed to
Like how heavily
a
it's used
function.
or-
And so,
Yeah, but depending on what you call it, so I'm really on the fence on tattoo and piercing. I don't understand why that would be a high-intensity usage. There's no smells. Generally, customers are gonna be there for a while, not just coming and going super frequently. So I'm having a hard time understanding
intensity.
the intensity for that one.
Yeah, again,
It's
I
a
think
term.
But it might be a
Knowledge.
public health thing.
But they'd be regulated by some
They would
health
hopefully be
agency.
regulated.
But then you
for
could,
those
so the
kinds of
opposite side of
issues.
that is, we regulated dogs or not cats, obviously, because they're toxic. We get that. We've regulated dogs because of the noise, but we're saying that you can go ahead and groom pets where they're arguably noisier and yelling over the shears. So I'm just trying to understand, and I understand that this list is a legacy and we're cleaning it up. So I think that it's really important to understand what the categories are so that we can appropriately place these within these two categories.
So the key word that you're looking for is appropriate, and I think you are looking to a logic of fairness, which I understand.
Or the reasons why these should be singled out.
But that's something different. That's not always totally fair, but it has to do with the priorities of the town and what we would like to see the town, the way we would like to see the town be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that always is not interpreted as a fair use, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some things that we would like to encourage in the town, and there's some things that maybe we don't want a lot of, or we've got plenty of, and thank you, just saying, what else you got? So that interpretation isn't always seen as a fair, because, you know, we should be somehow neutral and open to everything. And I'm not sure all of our codes are exactly neutral. I think there are things that we want to encourage and there are things that we want to discourage. And I think that's where we're coming up, that's where we're bumping up against to what's in what category. Because we want to encourage some things and we kind of want to discourage others.
But,
Yeah.
you know, in saying that, then the top list should say encourage establishments, and the second list should say discourage service establishments.
No, I'm not sure.
I'm just saying, that's.
Yeah, but when they open the book at the counter, that's
okay,
not gonna
so-
that's
so-
gonna cause some
that's-
emotional problems.
That's what we're wrestling with.
And that is what I'm wrestling with. And I think that the nuance that that John presented on restaurants, while in our mind could have a lot of people coming and going in a higher impact or whatever
Yeah.
word we choose there,
Yeah.
but that's part of the master plan.
Yes.
That's different than saying this is something that's discouraged, because I would love to see anywhere in the master plan where it talks about either dog grooming or tattoos and piercings.
It doesn't, yeah.
So I can get behind putting one there because it's encouraged in the master plan and it's not fair, right? If you're trying to classify
Right.
the way that we're talking about them. So I'm looking for a rubric, because I don't know how to decide any of these without knowing the rubric against which we're grading them.
This is
That's
why
the
we make
bottom
big
line of
bucks.
what we're talking
Well, I
about.
mean, but and to tag along to that, if you just presented us these two titles and then all these businesses on a separate list and then said,
Pick them where you want.
put them in one of these two categories, I guarantee they would look a lot different than this. And part of that's what are you starting with? What are those two lists called? You know what? I mean, that colors a little bit of how you think about it.
Well, I think that the categories are uses that we're fine to go in without review,
Right.
and uses that we want to take a little look at. I mean, that's
So reviewed uses versus non-reviewed uses.
yeah, uses that need discretionary review. That's really, and it was, in the past, it was very draconian division. It was permitted or CUP, and now we're saying, well, based on size, it's going to be permitted or minor CUP. But it's still the concept that we want some discretionary review to make sure that these.
The point is well taken then, John, that, you know, under the high-intensity service establishments, if we go down the list, there are going to be some that we would welcome, some that we would think are absolutely fine, and in some that need a real close look at.
And it's the control of the future of the town and that has a subjective element. You know, we've seen other cities that have not had good control on their development, and, you know, over time they're not the way anybody wanted them to be. So, and an element of that is subjective. So the concept of fair is difficult, but sometimes the value system behind it is well, we have preferences, and because Sierra Madre is the way it is, we prefer it to be this way. You know, it goes back to the same thing with color. You know.
somebody from the
We're not a
outside,
day glow town. So,
somebody from the outside can have their own concept of fairness that just doesn't
but how do we
jive with our
codify this
values.
so that it
You're
can work?
correct.
Well, the other issues that we also want to try to categorize these, right?
Yeah.
And that makes it a little tricky because in the past we did the laundry list methodology.
Yep.
And so and so you could at least go through each one. The problem with that, of course, is, who's against a guy doing coffee roasting? But it's not on the list. So it's not just additional review. It's just not allowed, right? And that's the big problem with that. So we do have to have some sort of rubric that makes sense on why these things are divvied up into the different categories. And, what we call those, we'll have to figure that out. But clearly, high intensity is the wrong term because that's gotten people into a...
No,
into
I mean,
the
the
wrong
way
mindset.
you just mentioned it a minute ago, which is like things we're okay with in terms of having a lower level of review on versus things we want to take a higher level of review on for any number of reasons. We may have had issues with that type of business in the past, or there may be something they're working with that we want to make sure isn't a problem. Who knows? Or it could be the intensity, like could be a high traffic business. I don't know. But that sort of definition makes sense to me.
Right.
I don't know what the word is to capture that, and maybe that is it. I don't know.
Because that defines the process.
Well, we'll
I don't know if we can hang our hat on that. If that works, then that's fine. But I think that's where we're.
okay. We'll come up with some. I think that's gonna. We'll find some term. I'm just digging through Pasadena code and I'm not finding it. But I know that they had some division like that before, and I think South Pass does too. So.
I think we're getting down to something really sincere and really healthy here about how we approach this. So, this is good discussion.
Okay.
So then, are we going to hold on with the categorization of these until we really have defined what?
I don't think we need to. I think we understand the concept, right? So if there's any in the top group that should be in the bottom, or the bottom that should be in the top,
I think
we flip
Bob.
it.
I think Bob, I think the nail salon moves to that.
I mean,
second
for
list,
now we can
which
call it
is
group
more,
one and
Yeah,
group two,
yeah, that's
right?
fine. That's fine.
a little more scrutiny or review.
Well, group one is service establishments generally.
Yeah. And group two is the ones that need discretionary review.
Veterinary clinics is listed twice.
Veterinary
It's the
clinics.
last one.
you
Well,
want that
that's-
to move?
That's because it has to get processed twice, I guess. Well, which one? So, which one do you want that under? I would assume we probably
Depends
want
what kind
that-
of small animal we're talking about.
Are they going to take cats or not? I think
I think we need to differentiate.
You know,
We really do.
cats have never been able to be regulated, right?
We've got to get on that. No, I think probably group two would be where.
Yeah, I think that's a group two.
That's all right.
And maybe pet grooming should go to
I
group
think
two.
pet grooming should probably go to group two.
Okay.
Nail salon.
And nail
Um,
salon went to two.
This is probably maybe I'm the only one who has an issue with this, but like when you have day health spa and massage therapy, I mean they're two different things. But the massage shops and stuff that we have, I don't have a problem with the business. My only problem is when they are in the storefront space and they close that off completely, and so it becomes almost a dark space.
Right.
And I know that's a function of their business because, I mean, privacy, low light, you're not gonna,
Well-
it's not an activity that's sort of open to the public view, right?
Right.
So I get that, but I have a problem with that, and I don't know if we address that with, in the storefront space, whether that was applicable
Well,
or
and
not.
that's one of the things is if we have the the design concepts of the open storefront and the visible windows. If you have that in a discretionary review, they'll be able to review that to a certain extent. So you would put your lobby up front so that it looks like an ongoing business, and then you'd put the stuff.
But to that point, if it's under 2,500 square feet, there is no review, right? If a massage
well,
therapy.
if we moved it to group two, it would.
Okay, well, that was my thought process, is because that's the one aspect of that type of business that I would want to see how they're dealing with that.
The other issue is we've got day health spas in group one, but health clubs
Yeah, what's
And
the
centers,
difference?
exercise and fitness studios in group 2, and those.
A lot
I
of gray
I did
area
not
there.
agree with that. I think the health clubs or centers should be a group one.
But
Yeah,
do you
well, it
agree
seems
that they're
like
the same thing?
They're pretty close, so we should probably put them in the same, whether
Oh,
we
I thought of
choose-
a day health spa like where you would go and get a facial or
Yeah.
something like that, not a gym type location where you're working out
Okay.
or karate type studio. That was my differentiation. on
Well,
those.
and then the
Well,
problem
how do you
is,
feel about which group they belong in then?
the
I think
issue,
the gym should be group one.
the issue with the
buy
gyms
that.
is that often there's a bigger parking demand.
Yeah.
That's often why those, and that's, those are full CUP now, and that's why they're,
How many?
But that one, this one captures like the one case where we had somebody come here, prospective business owner who wanted to relocate here, the Pilates studio or something. And I know at the time, obviously the full CP was a hurdle that was too much, along with, I think, finding a storefront that would take that, be an acceptable use space. But, gosh, I would hate to see a small business like that where it's almost like one-on-one instruction, but it's considered a gym.
Right.
Or even these.
I think that type of business should be in the top category, because if it's small, like under 2,500 square feet, then they can kind of by right.
Yeah, and
occupy
if
the
there's
space.
parking, I mean, they need the exercise, right? That's why they're going there. They can park at the Montecito lot and walk.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that for a larger gym establishment, like if you had, if a
But if it's-
24-hour fitness moved into town,
Yeah, but
then
they're gonna be more than 2,500 square feet,
yes.
and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just gonna
that-
say no.
yeah. So the issue you have there is if you put health clubs and yoga and day and health spas in group 1, but you put massage therapy in group 2, then don't you do massage therapy at day spas?
Well, we have standalone. I mean, I see them as separate, but yeah, you totally could. Could be a combined thing.
So, it's one of those things where if you call yourself massage therapy, you need to see a minor, but if you call yourself a day spa, you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, well, again, there's a little bit of an overlap here because different people may understand massage or massage therapy in different ways. You were
Like, my only concern, like I said, was I want to be able to see how they're treating the storefront space. And I know it's in conflict in general, to that business model, which makes sense, but I would want to see how they're treating that, whether that's all located back in the fronts like a lobby or sitting area, or where they do, day spa treatments, or those kind of things. But to not be able to look at that would be a problem. So I don't know how that gets parsed out in what category, but for those
you can have
reasons.
massage is part of a fitness establishment, right?
Well, it's listed as massage therapy, and the massage, if you think about it in town, there's maybe 4. They do it at Health Spa. They do the one on the north side of Baldwin. They do one almost on the south side of Baldwin across it. And there's one up on the second floor on Suffolk. And that's just like an office. I mean, that's the massage therapist I use, and she's got one room. I mean, there's a little ante room and a room, so it's tiny. And there's no, but then you have other ones that are on there's in that courtyard, there's one, so there's a reception area and then a room behind it, and I guess the one on the north side of Baldwin has, it's next to the law shop. It's actually kind of large.
Well, is the
And it's
issue
close.
here just the storefront issue? Because, I mean, the other thing we could do is we could say you're of right outside the main storefront, the prime storefront area, but you need a minor if you're going to go into the prime.
I like that.
Yeah.
I much prefer that.
For me, for that business model, yes. I mean, the one you just referenced, to me, I don't have any problem with the business being there, but I think they have like large curtains kind of closing it off with
Correct.
a neon sign that basically says.
And that's all you see?
All you see, and that's
So
like
do you
right
want to
at
do
the-
that with day health spa, massage therapy, health club, those three. Put them into the
Yes.
the minor. So basically, it's a minor if they're in the storefront, but permitted otherwise. Yeah.
If they're outside of that 50 feet or whatever we're
I
defining.
agree, yeah. Because their impact is actually that their relationship to the street.
You good with that?
Yeah.
All right, we're tearing this thing up.
And we moved nail salons to the second list.
Yeah.
Was the medical office the thought that we didn't want to have, same way we don't want to have a bunch of law firms
Well,
taking up our
I think
our
that it-
commercial zone, we don't want to have a bunch of
Well,
doctor's
again,
offices?
the medical offices are full CUP now, that's why they're here. But I think that generally the thought there was a parking issue, that medical office, and potentially there's, I don't know.
Well, potentially you run into the same thing as the massage therapy, like.
Both
you
places
know.
have to receive,
Yeah, hopefully, yeah, but you could, if you didn't, you could have medical offices that are basically blanked off to the street, you know, where you're seeing patients or something, you know, and
yeah.
that would not
Well,
be.
and I guess I was thinking more, we really want commercial businesses in the commercial zone.
Ideally, in that storefront zone that we're
Right.
calling, you know, would be sort of service establishments that
Yeah.
interact with the street, you know.
And where would a chiropractor fall between medical offices and massage therapy? Or any other kind of alternative
Probably under
medical
medical.
practice? Huh?
Probably under medical.
Just leave it under.
All right, so are you good with medical in group 2, or do you want to put it in that hybrid?
I'm fine with it in group 2.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, You
okay.
bring up, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to regulate them if they want to do it upstairs. That's what
Yeah.
that's what you're saying?
Yeah,
Put it in the hybrid?
yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, that's the same for the massage therapy. Like, if it was upstairs,
Right.
it would
That's-
be irrelevant.
It's a piece of cake, right.
But we have to be careful now, if we start putting a lot of stuff upstairs, you know, we talk about certain practical issues of how our storefronts are being used and so forth. Remember that you have accessibility regulations, and if you're starting to just push a lot of things upstairs and put these businesses in the position where they either have to spend money on an elevator to comply with accessibility or get out of town, then we're creating another kind of problem here.
Well,
too.
but-
So
But that's not what we're
but
saying.
we're not
We're saying
saying
they
that.
can have that prime storefront if
Yeah.
they have open windows in the front.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all we're
so
saying.
Or
if
they can go for a
if they
minor
do a
CUP.
minor, and
Yeah.
they show that they're gonna do the storefronts the way we want them, then they can.
So that's
Then
their
they can
way
be
out
there, yeah.
right
Right,
there.
or if
Or
they're-
in the
and
back.
There's a lot of places, yeah, like you said,
In
in
the
the back, that's not
In the back.
necessarily
Yeah,
up.
I shouldn't have said, I meant outside.
We're not
the
saying they
prime
have to go to the second store. We're saying in that prime storefront area, if they
Yeah.
want to occupy that,
Yeah.
sure, fine. But you're gonna come for a minor CUP or a CUP, depending on the size, and we're gonna look at it
Plus,
and
Believe
determine.
it or not, there are a number of elevators in town. The Bank of America building has an elevator. The building that Subway is in, I believe they retrofitted that with an elevator
They
as well.
had to do one there. yeah.
So, I mean, it's not as if
Gooden has one.
so there are options.
There's 2 private residents, I think, as I recall.
Yeah, actually, one more on Montecito. The lady came. Remember, she was building the house, rehabbing the house for her grandmother and
Right.
her mom, and she put in an elevator.
All the condos, the newer set of condos on Sierra Madre Boulevard on the west, those all have elevators in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very high end.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so we did the service, financial institutions we discussed. Educational facilities. Business schools, we're gonna get a lot of MBA places here.
Where do you put
You
like
watch, that's the future.
Yeah.
like karate studios, things like that? Is that educational?
were
or is
back
that-
over
I think
here in-
karate would be a health club,
Health club.
and fitness
martial
studio,
arts.
including martial arts, Pilates, and yoga.
Which we moved to group 1.
Which we moved
We moved to hybrid.
hybrid.
The gym, the health clubs
Yeah.
I thought we were moving the gyms and health clubs to group one. So we were saying that if it was a small group, a small guy coming in and doing or a small person coming in and doing a smaller class, that they shouldn't have to get a CUP for that.
Well,
Yeah,
I thought, but we were gonna put that in the hybrid, that if they were gonna do it in the storefront, they needed a minor, and if it was in the back, they didn't.
We didn't care.
That was for massage therapy.
Yeah,
There were a number that we did for the hybrid.
What was it? What did you have?
We did
I've got the
day,
day health spas,
Uh-huh.
massage
Massage.
therapy, health clubs, including fitness studios,
right, and medical
medical
office.
office. Those are the four into the hybrid.
oh, I did not realize we were
Yeah.
putting the gyms down there. I thought they were gonna be in the group one. Because we were using the 24-hour fitness example, that if you're under 2,500 square feet,
Right.
It's like personal trainer or like a small
Yeah,
Pilates
to
studio.
me, I mean, the issue you have is the same storefront issue, though.
yeah,
Oh, that's right.
yeah,
And that's
I forgot about the
purpose of
storefront.
the hybrid. But I agree, if they're doing, I mean, it goes back to the.
I mean, they would welcome that storefront. Like, I mean, those business models. I mean,
They want the storefront,
they want
right?
the
You
storefront because they
people
want to see
driving
the
by.
activity.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
You know,
I
if a
mean,
gym's
we're-
occupied, it's
We're talking about even group two, or even less the hybrid. We're still moving down from a full CUP.
Sure.
yes.
It's currently
yeah.
required to a minor in some places and permitted in others.
If you go down to Foothill Boulevard, at the corner of Foothill and Santa Anita, there used to be a bank on the northeast corner that is now a 24-hour gym. And it doesn't have anybody in it, but it's all storefront that looks out on Foothill. And you get an access card, and if you want to, run on a treadmill at 2 a.m., you can go down and check in. And it's all lit up, but it kind of impacts that whole area. I mean, it wasn't that busy because it was a storefront, because it was
It used to be 3 nail salons.
but it also was a bank.
It was a bank and then 3 nail salons.
Okay, so now but to that, I'm not sure that I want to,
Been correct.
I'm not sure that that's what the image I want, that's not sure the image that the town has. I mean, even there used to be a place called Train that was at the corner of Second and where the train tracks across from the 24-hour fitness. And that was a little tiny building, and they were more of a personal gym kind of thing. That was much more palatable because they still had visibility, but they didn't impact the storefront and the commercial area. I think the one on Foothill really impacts the commercial area because no one's going to do any business on that long storefront anymore. That's done, as long as they're there. And I'm not sure we want to replicate that up here.
Yeah. I just wish there was a way to parse out the small sort of personal training
Yeah, I guess.
come by appointment and we.
Well,
you know,
again, but the Pilates studio was not a storefront. Remember, it was going to go in the back,
Right.
and I think a lot of those spaces are gonna lease out at a lower rate, and that's probably where they're going to locate.
Yeah. That's true.
We have, there's a personal training place on the top floor, the third floor of the White Elephant on Baldwin. And they came to us and that went in a heartbeat. We had no problem with that.
But they need a full CUP.
But
right?
they had to pay for a full CUP.
And now
Yeah,
they would go
and
in.
Now, if we did put it into the hybrid, then, because I guess if I see the karate studio where it is, I'm okay with it. If I see it take the place of Beantown, I'm
There
not
you
as
go.
happy.
You're not
Yeah.
a
And
connect.
that's what we're trying to
Or if
protect
you see the
against.
karate studio that puts a full curtain across the
Yes.
front, right? That's going to be a problem. I mean, one of the things about the way the karate studio does is it has a full plate glass window that you can see what's going on inside, and it has activity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's my big concern. And I think we talk about the massage thing, that's often what happens, and you get like this dead space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
interesting.
can live with the hybrid.
It's interesting, Bob, how they repainted that building tan
Right.
20 years ago, and we still call it the White Elephant,
Yeah,
right?
it's the tan elephant now.
Didn't, yeah.
Hey,
didn't-
it's
didn't
natural
improve
color.
it much.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's a natural color.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot.
It's your earth tone.
So, I'm sorry to resurface something that we skipped over quickly.
Yeah, we
It
can't
seemed
do
to be a taboo subject about the adult buildings, the adult stores.
Yeah.
We're saying right now that it is harder to get a 2,501 square foot barber shop in town than it is to put it in an adult store.
Well, no, because there's all sorts of radius restrictions on the adult store.
That the barber shop doesn't have.
The barber shop.
Understood. We're all hoping that there's nowhere that it fits.
No, I'm
It
sure
probably
I'm
fits
sure it
somewhere.
fits somewhere.
No.
I'm
Randy
sure
would
it,
never say that.
It's
on
gotta
the
I'm sure
record.
it fits
I'm
somewhere.
sure it fits somewhere.
I'm sure it fits somewhere, right? So do we want, if we're trying to look forward in what we're looking for this town and put forth
Mm.
what we think what the city would want versus what it doesn't want, do
Mhm.
we think that the city wants it to be easier to put in one of those stores than a 2,501 square foot barber shop?
That's a fair question.
The answer is no. Right, I mean, but I don't think it really is. I mean, I know from the category perspective, but because of all these other restrictions, I mean,
That only they have.
right.
Right.
But I mean, I'm fine with moving adult business to full CUP. My understanding is we can't just ban it,
Can't
right?
say no.
We can't ban it.
We
so-
can't ban it, but we can make it
high
subject to
bar.
a CUP.
Sure.
But we'd have to change the language, right?
But if you're gonna make it subject to the CUP, and still have all of those location restrictions, then what's left to regulate under the CUP?
Yeah.
They're only allowed on 3rd and 4th floors.
Well, no, I mean, but the flip side of that, Tom, is it then we go on record as having approved something that we were hoping just by the natural restrictions would, not lend itself to even, coming to before us in the first place, then
Yeah, there's
then we say
actually
yes to something that we can't say no to.
right. There's actually, I think, a fear with a CUP that you might be more accommodating because
Because you can't make the findings.
yeah, because you can't make the findings. And the other thing is if they don't meet these tests, but they're of right, you just say no. But if let's say they're they can't be within, is it 500 feet or whatever the radius is, but they're close. They're 450 instead of 500. Come on, we're pretty close. You can make those findings. And then you're sort of backed into a corner. This has worked for quite a few years.
Okay.
I don't want to touch it. It's big.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
It has a quality of having a third rail. I would leave it alone.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
Recreational?
Are we
Educational.
we're good with educational,
Yep.
Okay.
recreational, circuses? I don't know why that's in our code, but
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is, carnivals and fairs typically are temporary, so you get a temporary use permit. I don't know of a year-round carnival and fair, but there it is.
Here's a question. Okay, well, I guess you're just transferring this wording from somewhere else, right?
Yeah, that's what's in our code now.
All right. So there is a possibility we could have private parks and playgrounds.
Yeah, I think with that, maybe that's like a rock climbing place. I don't know. Maybe you'd put a rock climbing place in a gym.
Parks, playgrounds. I mean, I see the commercial rec facility would be like, now that the pool's privatized, like that's a
Yeah.
rec facility,
The
right?
rock climbing is gonna be gymnasium, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so. I mean, this language is totally verbatim from the existing code. So, whether we want to scotch some of these or just say, well, it's worked so far, and right now they all require full CUPs, and we're suggesting that we move the smaller ones to minors.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't do that and we say full CUPs for all if you don't like
No.
these uses. I don't know.
No, I'm just, yeah.
I don't imagine we're going to get many billiard parlors or
playgrounds.
bowling alleys without booze, right? And then they're going to need a full CUP.
Yeah. Yeah, in concept, this makes sense.
We good? Okay.
All right.
Automobiles.
I think automobiles, just say car dealerships.
Sure, because sale of internal combustion engine powered vehicles now.
I can get my hydrogen fuel cell car.
That's because of the,
Electrical.
that's because of the scooters. No, it's because there used to be a scooter shop in town, and there's an issue if you have an electric scooter versus a scooter that's
Gas-powered.
gas-powered. And the gas-powered one is fumes and repair and things like that, that theoretically you don't have an electric.
So then Tesla wouldn't need a CUP as long as they were under
Well,
2,500 square
there's
feet?
still a car dealership.
There's still a car dealership.
Yeah, 'cause it's
So they
slash.
would need a
Oh,
CUP.
'cause it's a slash.
That
okay.
second part is for a very
Well, that's-
specific reason.
That
because
slash makes it a little ambiguous, as
we
we
could,
can
we
see
could,
here at the
we
table.
can make it into a separate line item, I mean. I think there's somewhere where we have,
Well, or just,
bicycle shops, you see, bicycle shops and retail, including sale of electric bikes and scooters.
You have that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's in the retail,
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
as opposed to,
So we can strike this here.
well, no, because what this does is it puts gas-powered things into the
it
automotive.
says we don't want them, or we're gonna look at them carefully. But maybe with the addition of,
So a
couple of
motorcycle,
words
a
is-
motorcycle dealership
This says car
would be
dealership.
would need a CUP. Although it's not a car dealership, it's motorcycles.
We could put these on separate lines, car dealership and then sales of internal combustion powered vehicles, and that, so that it's not seen as limiting.
Okay. I mean, as soon
We're
as you
gonna
say
get
car,
past the
We
dealership, so,
Probably spent more time on it than it'll ever see.
yeah.
Yeah.
right.
um,
Just make it two separate, either car deal, replace the slash with a couple of plain English words, or else make it two separate lines.
Two separate lines.
and then,
Okay.
the other thing to keep in mind is that, drive-through uses are prohibited. So,
Yes,
that's not gonna be allowed in here.
yes. Where does it say that?
That says it in a different section.
Yeah, okay.
1736-050.
We okay with automotive?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's go.
Res?
Res.
Isn't any issue here, is there?
Oh.
Again, we have a section that talks about where they're located,
We've been there.
and,
What is our thing here? Is it all?
it's, yeah, as long as it's not in the prime storefront.
Okay.
And it's, by Measure V, it's 13 units to the acre.
Okay, so then if it cannot be in the prime storefront, or if they would?
Cannot be in the prime
Okay,
storefront.
so then that's irrelevant then.
Right, it's just prohibited there.
Yeah.
Except for, the access, the stairwell or whatever.
Yes, okay.
What we don't list here is group homes, but because those are regulated somewhere else, those will be cross-referenced.
Do we list, like, daycare facilities or?
Yeah, all that group home
nurseries,
is done by the other section.
or like children daycare, places like that?
Yeah, that's all in the discretionary permits chapter.
Okay.
Did staff capture all that?
I believe so.
Okay.
Don't worry, we'll have one that doesn't fit, no matter how much we try, but.
Hey, John?
Yeah.
I've got a general question. Under the different lists that we have here, that are all like commercial business, there are two things here that kind of jump out at me. One is transfer, moving, storage of furniture, household, and so forth, which is under high-intensity service establishments. And then also under automobile, the utility trailer and truck rental. We could imagine those as being like East Montecito kind of uses. So my question is, might these better just be placed in the manufacturing zone and not even suggest that they would belong in the middle of our commercial area?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I think that, hearkening back to the olden days when we were a more self-sufficient city, they probably wanted to make room for that, but I don't know that we want a U-Haul place here, so.
Well, or we wouldn't, like right in Kirsten Court, right? Well, you all consider it anyway. I'm just wondering if those two shouldn't just be moved into manufacturing.
Which two?
Transfer, moving, and storage of furniture, household and business records, goods,
And utility trailer.
utility trailer, and truck rental.
Under high intensity?
Yeah, just consider whether we want to move that to a more East Montecito-like
Yeah, I don't
district.
think you'd want that in your,
I guess one of the issues we have that we want to think about is when you talk about auto rental, does that, if you have a car share place, is that going to fall under that? Because that's something that's not
That's an actually an up-and-coming issue.
right.
You mean like an Uber collection point?
I don't know what an Uber collection. No, Uber collection is where you'd hop on. I mean, like what's the name of that thing?
It's a smart car, I mean, a car that you can,
It's a car share service.
it's a car share service where the car is sitting there and you get on your phone and they let you have access to it, you drive around, you put it back in the same place.
Yeah, that's
So for people who don't own cars, you only want to use a car for a couple hours.
you
And,
pick it up.
and that is
like a
on the
lot.
Ascension.
and that's
Yes, it
also
is.
something I don't think if we reserved 4 spots on
In
the
the
Mariposa
Post a
parking
lot,
lot, I don't think we'd have heartburn with.
yeah.
Zipcar, that's the
Zipcar, that's the name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, like Zipcar. Yeah, that's really an interesting question because as an alternate transportation system, is it something that you would really want to have in downtown for the sake of it being like really central and being kind of a transit oriented thing, or do you want to make people walk way over into East Montecito to be able to do that?
I think you'd want it central, in any of the lots that are downtown, like the one behind the old jail, there, or Mariposa, or even by the post office.
How many different alternative services are there, and is it?
Oh, there are
it's-
more and more, I mean.
Well, I'm just wondering if it's something that's only going to come up for us once or twice, and it's going to be a very, very interesting hearing all for itself, or whether it's something that we might be seeing a lot of in the future, and we should try to cover through ordinance.
I don't think the answer, I don't think we know the answer to that yet. I think it's
the
still
other
evolving.
thing is if it's like, smart car service, they don't even have a space. You just park it wherever you want and leave it there. But Zipcar has dedicated parking spaces, but they're not like a giant, like a car rental place that has 100 cars. It's like you might have 4
Couple
parking
parking
spaces.
spots,
And the problem there is, if we had one of those and we were added to their system, I think it would be beneficial. But if they have to do a full CUP, they're probably just say, yeah, forget it.
We
It's not
just
worth
put it down.
It's not worth it for
Yeah.
4 spaces.
Yeah, even to take the time to.
Right.
Some businesses won't take the time to do it at all. And if it is, it doesn't look like the Enterprise lot, okay, but it's just some spaces and it has some very neat electronics associated with those spaces and maybe a sign, then it may be perfectly cool to put them in the downtown area.
Okay.
Where do you want to put that? Group 2 and service establishments?
Group 2? Well,
That's a minor.
what you just talked about?
Yeah.
Zip car scenario?
Or do you want to?
I think it would,
I don't, do we,
we'd want to encourage that.
I
wouldn't
think
we?
we want to encourage it, but
In the
they're not
hybrid?
gonna, but they're not
But
gonna.
they're not
need
even they're not
They're not gonna have
technically
store-
occupying a building, right? They're taking parking.
Well, they're
space.
taking parking.
They're taking area, but that's not technically a use in a structure, though.
Yeah, but it's a use that would, I mean, it's anywhere. It's outdoor. It's still a use.
Okay.
I mean, it's like parking not associated with a use is a full CUP.
Yeah, we deal with uses that aren't in buildings, just like.
Well, that's
gonna be Outdoor under dining.
2,500 square feet. I mean, it's gonna be like you said, 4 or 5 spots or something.
Yeah, but the question is, do we want any kind of review, and do you want it to be in a specific place? Like, we could put it in the hybrid, and then it wouldn't be in the
I like the
front.
hybrid. So we get to look at it.
Well,
If it's
how does a hybrid work for that?
If it's outside of the prime,
Basically, the hybrid would
Uh,
mean
there's
you
no
couldn't
storefront.
put it in the parking lot on the corner of Baldwin and Montecito, but you could put it in the Mariposa lot or the lot, north of the old
Auburn.
City Hall.
Why couldn't you put it,
Not up, yeah, over.
Because that's prime storm front area is 50 foot deep.
but the parking spot's not gonna be in the back. Parking spot's gonna be out front. You could dedicate Kirsten Court parking
Well, I
spots
know,
to
but I'm
this.
not saying, but if you look at the definition of prime storefront area, it's 50 feet back from Baldwin, right? And 50 foot back from Montecito, so that's gonna take
Yeah.
up that parking lot. So,
Well, you wouldn't want it there anyway, I mean, I don't think.
Well, I don't know, maybe you would. It's not uglier than any other car that's parked, and it's the most visible.
No, but I mean, I think that little parking area or drive-through area, that's prime parking space that people want. You know, I mean, as much as we say, go
Go to the
walk from
lot.
Mariposa and come up to get your dry cleaning or go to the pharmacy or whatever, like, people are
So-
circling that, so I think to have like parked cars there,
So you wanna put
They
it in a
don't move.
hybrid?
I think the hybrid.
Yeah.
Because you want it, but you don't want it just anywhere.
you wanna keep the entry reasonable for that sort of use, so I think, but you wanna look at it to some extent, so.
Yeah, and we'd also like it to be something that became efficacious in terms of promoting alternative transportation too, so, you know, we wouldn't, we might want to look for a location, help influence a location that was going to make this successful, as opposed to they're being forced to be in some much less accessible area of our parking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, circling back to the utility trailer and truck rental, I guess I don't have a real problem with that in the automotive with a full CUP. Because let's say Arnold's wanted to add a trailer rental business, you know, to the back of their thing, that wouldn't give me heartburn at all. If it were a lot with a full U-Haul, you know, that I could, but I think that,
But what if it was a lot next to Arnold's that's vacant, and it became a rental?
right, I mean, that gives us, we get a full CUP, we get a chance to review that. I don't know. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, I don't know. That's why we have a full CUP.
Well, you know, CUP, you are saying, that, yeah, but theoretically, we would be allowing this under certain circumstances.
Right.
So let's just say, no, we're not.
Well, again, but I guess what I'm saying is I can imagine circumstances where I wouldn't mind if Arnold's had some utility trailer rental that's tucked in the back. Because they've got a storefront, you know, it's an accessory use.
But it would be a minor more than likely, right? So I don't know, would we see it?
All
Yeah,
all
full
automobiles
CUP.
are full COP.
Full CUP, that's what I'm saying.
And that's not saying that we would
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong.
embrace it, but the CUP allows us to evaluate it. So there is the possibility that it could be, that it could happen. We're not gonna say no, never, under no circumstances, but they'd have to bring it to us, and so they would have to, it would have to be a serious exploration for them to spend the money to come to us, you know, to rent trailers.
So you're actually proposing to move that to a higher threshold, essentially?
No,
It's under CUP now.
utility trailer and truck rentals and automobile, it's a full CUP.
Oh, I thought you were talking about transfer, moving, storage.
No, that thing, I don't really even understand what that is. So, I don't know what to do.
Well, wouldn't that include things like Sullivan's storage units on East Montecito, a moving company, moving van that was associated with it,
Yeah.
that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where I think maybe we take out. I
Yeah,
agree.
and goes to manufacturing or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that should definitely. But it's a more difficult thing when you think about like U-Haul trailers versus Arnold's, you know.
But that's why
you don't wanna
that's
support
why I
what
think
Arnold's-
having a CUP would make sense. And if they came in with a U-Haul trailer and they wanted to put it on that lot next to Arnold's, we could say, look, you know, we discourage parking in the front yard. There's all these reasons why
Visibilities, yeah, that kind of stuff.
we could deny the CUP.
Okay.
Okay,
Done?
Good. So we want to do the other list from the discretionary list.
Which one's that?
That's the list of CUPs that you can do anywhere in town.
Attachment F?
Attachment
believe.
F. That, things like airports.
Dumps, education, equestrian establishments, amusement parks, labor camps, racetracks.
We're on attachment F.
Attachment F?
1760-030.
Yep.
Let me get there.
So set the table on this. What we're.
So 1760-030A is conditional uses all zones except RC zone. So this is just this list of junk that ages ago we said, well, let's just throw in here because we don't know what the heck to do with. And so I guess that's probably fine, but one thing we might want to do is see if there's some of these that we just don't want anywhere. The other thing we might want to do is it's all zones except RC. We might also add open space, because I don't think we want these uses in open space at all.
So is the goal first to chuck what we can, like take out what's unnecessary? Or
If we want, I mean, one thing we could do is we could just say, you know what, this is a system that's functioned for us, so let's just leave it be. I don't know, but it's the same thing like we took out rabbit slaughtering on one place. You know,
Well,
if there's something in here that just shocks your conscience, we could take it out.
But some of this might also be duplicative with what in the other list, like clubs.
Right,
I think we list clubs.
A recreational center's privately owned.
right.
Is that in
Is
here
another,
too?
is another
Yeah,
one.
some of this stuff might be, and also the thing is, you know, you could, according to this, you could put this in the R1 zone, right? If you got a CUP,
Yeah.
because this is all the zones. You probably wouldn't get your CUP approved, but
I mean, if you're really fishing, you would want to come to this and see if there's, you know, if you get a better deal here than.
well, you don't get a better deal because it's CUP. I mean,
Okay.
there's some stuff that we allow less than a CUP that would be.
Yeah. Well,
but
then you really want to look if this is contradictory to what we just created in the commercial zone. Like you would strike clubs. I don't even know why that would be there.
well, but the
because-
reason why is because you could have a club in our R1 zone. And so I think it's fine if we have a thing that says in the commercial zone, you can do it with a minor, but anywhere in town, you can do it with a full CUP. I think that works. It's just, and my sort of general blush on this is these things probably aren't going to happen, so let's not waste a lot of time, and this is a system that's worked. But if, you know, if you think that amusement parks we should just strike, or labor camps.
Or dumps.
Yeah, maybe dumps.
Yeah.
You know, we could take those out, but
I mean, it's one of those, it's that concept too, like, if you put the idea forward, it may also spark, I mean, it may never happen, but, like, the fact that we list some of these things, it's possible, well, City of Sierra Madre is okay with us having a circus or carnival fairground. Maybe we could horn that in somewhere, I don't know.
Right.
Like, it presents the idea as a possibility. Granted, the bar is really high, but
the
why
flip
not just
side
strike it?
is it's been in here since 1978. So do you cause more problems by trying to strike it? Because then when you strike dumps, somebody looks at, well, why are you leaving labor camps in? You know, I don't know.
I just think some of it should. I don't know. I think
So there we are. You know, what do you want to do?
So,
Let's leave it the way it is. See, it becomes a very almost decadent kind of statement about all the stuff we don't want and we just don't want to see here, guys. I don't think it's gonna hurt if we just leave it in.
Any suggestions from staff? Because we could think our way into a hole here and spend a lot of time on this that we may not need to.
Right.
I always thought this would be the opportunity to clean it up.
Okay,
We had this discussion once before.
okay.
Right, we, when we were talking about group homes, then we sort of punted then, so.
How would you clean it up, and,
Like by striking,
By striking certain things?
Yeah, such
Okay.
as
make the list shorter.
dumps and labor camps.
Okay,
I mean, equestrian establishments could stay, like that's,
so,
you know.
why don't we just go down the list
Yeah.
and have a vote, okay? How about first of all, do we want to add open space to the conditional uses?
I think so.
No, I think we just want to add open space to
The
the
exception.
To
exception.
the zones, to the exception zones, yes,
Exceptions, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
under conditional uses.
Yeah, so it's all zones except RC and open space.
Right,
Airports, I'm fine with leaving airports because I think these might be more RC, little airplanes, like the one on.
Drones.
Drones. And
Well,
and
with
we're not
ta-
gonna fit a real.
taxi drones are right behind the, those other,
Fair enough.
automated
Okay.
automobile uses.
all right, fine, what's
We'll leave it in.
burrow pits?
That's a grading thing.
Why
If
is
you,
that?
if you borrow dirt from one pit to stack up somewhere else. So we don't want you to change the grade that more than 3 feet.
Yes or no?
I think we leave that.
Okay,
Alright.
churches,
Yeah,
There's
churches,
cemeteries.
cemeteries,
obviously, clubs,
yeah,
columbariums,
yeah, that's
crematoriums,
fine.
yeah, we're okay?
Yeah.
Crops,
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Dumps,
kill.
No.
okay, we just killed dumps. Educational institutions? Yeah.
Yeah,
Equestrian establishments?
yeah.
Okay. Establishments or enterprises involving large assemblages of people or automobiles as follows.
Oh, so this is a sub list of that.
Correct.
And how can you tell when the sub list ends?
I think you
When you
just-
get past
no,
E?
I think you strike that and just the sub list is part of the list. Why do we?
Yeah,
why
I
do you
agree.
think-
Just
Okay.
get rid of that.
So we're gonna
Strike
take out,
that line.
strike that line and we'll go do amusement parks. Yes
No.
or no?
No, what, I mean,
I'd say take it out.
you don't want a Knott's Berry Farm in town.
Okay, then
So
Nothing
if
against
somebody
Knott's
wants to
Berry
put
Farm.
up a couple of rides in the park for a festival, that would be a
Temporary.
temporary use permit versus
That's
this.
like a carnival.
but
or-
amusement park is a permanent. So we're no on amusement
No.
parks?
I don't
No.
care.
Circuses, carnivals, or fairgrounds?
Sure.
Oh,
Sure what? Sure leave them or sure kill them?
leave them?
No, I'm fine with it.
Really?
That goes
As a
to what
permanent-
you're saying. Oh, is it permanent? Carnival's not permanent.
Well,
This
And
is
that-
a
this
permanent.
this is a permanent list.
A conditional use permit runs with the land.
Oh, yeah, no, we don't want.
Grant
we-
a CUP, it's
I hate clowns.
permanent.
I don't want
Okay, then.
Fairgrounds.
Probably just as much as you don't like cats. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna, the circuses only come on a temporary permit then, right?
Never
Okay.
now.
All right, or never.
No, because we allowed this in the commercial zone.
Oh,
So we can- we'll do a CUP on the circle.
Labor camps?
out.
Out. Open air theaters? Drive-in, do we want a drive-in theater here?
Wait,
Is that-
that's different. Open air
I think it's
theaters, I
different.
think that's fine. That-
So you
could
look
be
at- so
Shakespeare,
You look at
that's
open
Shakespeare.
theaters as Shakespeare. I think because of that previous line which we struck, they're looking at it as a drive-in movie theater.
No,
I
it's
think those
it's-
are drive-ins.
Assemblages
no,
involving
it's a people.
large of people or automobiles.
Yeah.
What if the Forest Service wanted to put a camp, that's what we're precluding on the labor camp? I want to understand what labor camp means. Because it can't mean what we're assuming it means.
Yeah, it does. It's left over from a long time ago.
Farm,
Be
it's
careful,
farm.
watch the politics.
WPA. It's WPA.
So open air theaters, yes or no?
I say yes because
Okay,
we,
that's
we got a
fine.
CUP.
Racetracks and rodeos?
Permanent rodeo ground, that'd be great.
Oh, yeah,
Wait,
okay, that's a no.
racetrack.
A racetrack? I mean,
Racetrack, really?
no.
I think to the point of
For what?
remote control drone airports, there could be
Oh.
remote control.
That's under airports.
Yeah, but these little RC
The little RC.
the cars.
Oh, the RC cars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an indoor.
It doesn't
No,
have to
no.
be.
Or a bike racetrack, like a BMX
So
kind
are
of
you,
thing.
are you guys leaning for it?
I think we should
with
leave-
the CUP?
leave it
All right,
in.
we'll leave it, fine.
Leave it in.
Recreational centers privately operated.
Can we go back? Do you want to get rid of the rodeo part though?
We left equestrian.
Do you want? Okay. then
We
fine.
did.
Yes.
We love
surrounded by
horses.
cowboys. Okay.
Yeehaw.
Recreational centers, privately operated.
I could see this is really getting neater.
Well, we've actually eliminated a number of things, so progress has
This is
been made.
fine.
We're allowing it.
We're okay with that.
Yeah.
Trailer parks.
Is that something we can?
We left
eliminate?
rodeos.
Go ahead.
There's state law that will preclude you from saying you can't have a mobile home or trailer park.
Okay, then it
So
stays.
Yeah, leave it in then.
I'd keep it. We just say, yeah, you can, but it's gonna have to be a CUP.
Fraternity.
No, I mean that.
Fraternities, we just allowed fraternities
We did.
in the commercial zone. So the question is, do you want fraternities, say, in the apartment zone?
No,
Well,
I don't. think-
fraternity. I mean,
What if the elk want to have
are they any?
a little building that's not in the commercial zone? We're saying they can't?
Well, what's the name of the one that's up in the canyon?
Nature Friends.
Nature Friends.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with them.
But like in the R1 or R2 or R3.
All we're
Canyon.
saying is they have to come ask us.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
CUP. I think we leave that.
Golf courses.
Yeah, I think we leave that.
Livestock care and maintenance for commercial or non-commercial purposes.
I'm fine with that.
You're okay with it?
Yeah, it's a CUP, livestock. I mean, I don't think people are gonna run cattle in town, but
Well, they could.
If they
Okay.
meet all the findings of a CUP.
we
Hey, we got the rodeo.
You know,
Let's have the
there was a big political brouhaha about 20 years ago about keeping horses. So I don't.
We're
I don't-
we're
I don't
protecting horses. We've
Well,
got equestrian and rodeos.
So if you want to have what's livestock, a cow or a sheep, I don't know. If you can do a CUP, I don't.
For
Donkeys.
commercial, all right, mortuaries.
Yeah, fine.
Sure.
Okay, natural mineral resources, the development of, together with the necessary buildings, apparatus, is this like a mining?
A mining operation?
And the way this is written, this was obviously an issue at some point.
I think we
Required for the exploration of oil, rock, sand, gravel, or clay, or any other section of this code, make separate provisions in respect to thereto. What are we,
Strike that.
is this like a mining operation?
Yeah, no.
Well, this is
No.
this is mining, but I think the main thing they would have rock and sand, rock
Quarries,
and gravel
like a
quarries.
quarry?
Yeah.
Yeah, Corey.
Because what you do is when you dig out part of the hillside, you mine the rock and.
I don't want to see that.
I don't think we got a place for that. The traffic alone is kill you.
The trucks, yeah.
The
We
trucks.
shouldn't allow it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're scratching off the
Yes.
mining operation?
That's not going to cause problems with our settling ponds, right?
No, that's
We strike this.
no.
No.
That's because it's, yeah. Nonprofit organization provided they shall be excluded from the commercial zone except as provided in section 1756-120.
That's the non-conforming part that we put in for that.
I think that's fine.
So that's fine. Yeah.
That's okay. Parking lots, commercial,
Yeah.
okay. Public utilities or utilities operated by mutual agencies consisting of water wells, electrical substations, gas metering stations, cell phone exchanges, power boosters, or conversion plants with the necessary buildings, apparatus, appurtenances isn't there too when located in the C or M
This,
zones?
I think, mirrors the exact language that is in the open space zone, and we've excluded the open space zone from this section, so we're basically saying you can't build those anywhere other than open space.
Public utilities or utilities operated by mutual agents consist of water wells, electricals. So,
Do we have, for the city attorney, do we have the power, or are there public utility regulations that would take precedence over this?
Oh,
Do we have the right to say no to any of this?
The, when it comes to buildings, like their commercial office buildings, I'm not sure. But when it comes to line or poles that they have to put, which generally go in the public right-of-way, they have the right to do it, but the right is subsidiary to the right of the public to use the right-of-way. What that means is they can locate it there, but we can also make them move it at their own cost. And that's long-standing code and case law. But you can't just, you need the facilities, so you don't want to say they can't exist.
Well, how
In a
about
perfect-
something like oil derricks in a public park?
Well, we
You
just
could
got
sense
rid of.
that
You just
goes-
got rid of the
got
oil
rid of
derricks
mining.
up in the upper one. Natural resource, because that's natural mineral
That
resources.
goes to whether or not you have the property owner has the right to sell the extraction of minerals from the ground, so.
Well, I would,
Well, I mean,
okay,
this-
well, oil derricks may be a bad
This
one,
one
but
might
something,
be
let's
more-
say in the public utility sector, the question is, are there laws that would govern a public utilities right to do something that would completely override anything that we would want to say about where you could or couldn't?
There is
place the
for, yeah,
facility.
there is for electric but electric lines and what else is in
Probably
here? Yeah,
telecommunications.
yeah, sure, there is.
So we'll keep it.
To me, I see this.
What's the
as
difference
an ex-
between these two?
Right, there's two of them here that, so what's the next one, what's that one about?
Well, that one's about refuse disposal,
Except for any public, which is,
city.
for which a
like
building
franchise.
permit is not required pursuant to the,
So it's for public facilities.
Well, I mean, we can't require a conditional use permit for an electric company to lay down its lines and facilities, telephone chargers, power boosters.
so the first one of these two seems to talk about stations, exchanges, boosters, or conversion plants. They talk about buildings.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is depending on, buildings I'm not sure about whether you can require a conditional use permit just to have the building. I mean, it depends on what it's for. Is it a corporation yard to service, where where they need to keep the equipment that are gonna go out and service the lines? I'm uncertain.
So should we just leave it in then?
We can leave it, and I can research it for you if you
Okay.
want, whether we have the authority to require a conditional use permit for that. I know that we cannot require a conditional use permit to actually lay the line or the facility or, that actually transmits the power.
Well,
We should be able to, I mean, your research will be appreciated.
Yeah,
But,
I will research it
I mean,
for you.
I think what we would be protecting against by being able to control a CUP for the building itself would be the phone center at Highland and
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Baldwin.
Baldwin.
Yeah,
But
and
it
then-
says other than CRM zones.
yeah. So like R1.
Well, we have a Edison substation on,
Benita.
Bonita.
Yeah.
And that's
This-
such a curious old building, I don't think that really doesn't
Well, you could also think
cause
of it
any
like
issues for anybody, does
well,
it?
they're used to it.
a
They're,
while ago. Remember the new cell tower that went up in the settling basin or in
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
area? It had that little prefabricated not a mobile home, but it had that thing where we were asking for screening
Yeah.
trees and stuff. It was like a little box.
But that's part of the telecom there, and we have a whole separate section on that.
Yeah, but I'm saying in this, is it possible in an R1 or R2 or R3 zone to put up basically a booster tower or something right in
I
the
think
parkway?
that's
if the
that's
cell phone
covered more
companies
by-
wanted to improve cell phone service in town, I would not vote against that.
Well, I'm just
But no, I think that's really covered by the
That's a
cell
separate
thing.
regulation.
not a
But
public
that's also something we have to get to, because they have those micro towers now that they were trying to pump us on to allow them of right, and we said no, but we might want to have a minor or something for that, but that's a different issue.
Yeah, but here's the point. In between buildings, in between just real buildings and lines in the public right of way, like you were talking about, there's all the possibility of all this other kind of ancillary equipment that may be, like big pieces of electrical equipment that are brought in and put on a pad.
Like a transformer.
Transformers, maybe some other kinds of things, power boosters, conversion plants,
Well, I would
other
just-
things like that could have a negative effect on the physical, visual environment.
Well,
Or I think we need more research on
We
it.
need more research, and you know, we don't have a reason to kill them, so why don't we just let them be?
Yeah.
They've
Unless
served
there's
us
a
up until
reason.
now. It's not, I think we're going through right now to strike things that we are,
Egregious.
we have uniformity in opposition of, and these
Right.
two seem to pose some question of, we're not
The
sure.
other question I have is why, when this is located outside the CRM zone, it seems like you'd want to have this, again, in all zones, other than the ones we listed, so. But, yeah, let's circle back to that.
Okay. Refuge, disposal of?
If this means dump again, I'm all for cutting it out.
I agree.
It does.
Okay, and that's gone. Sewage disposal plants? Is that a municipal function?
It can be.
It should be.
It should be.
Yeah.
I think we should.
It'd be county
leave that in there.
sanitation districts, not municipal.
Well, it's some kind of municipality.
As-
In which
as
case they'd
water
fall into the same.
shortages continue to get worse and worse. I'm quite familiar with Cambria, the city
Right.
of Cambria. They have, right there as you turn and head towards the beach at Chamel Park, you can see the facility there. And there's talk about eventually being able to reclaim some of that water for other purposes, irrigation or whatever. So I think that we should,
Well, the other part is we certainly, I mean, if we had, even if we had issues with what we traditionally think of sewage, we don't want to ban stormwater, right? And so
we'll leave
this
it?
is really ambiguous, so maybe we want to leave it and just regulate with the
Yeah,
sewage.
essentially, it would become the same kind of issue, I think, as what we were just talking about with public utilities.
Okay. Sorority?
fine.
It's fine.
Okay. Swimming pools, hot tub spas, similar recreation facilities that are located within 25 feet and/or visible to or from the public or private street or alley.
Yeah, I think we deal with swimming pools in the local code, in the particular codes, right?
Yes.
So
So
this says recreational facility, though. Does that mean that this is like the public pool? If somebody wanted to open, because technically that's a private pool now, right? Or I guess it's
Yeah.
operated.
It's operated
But
by,
it's still a recreational
But
facility.
it's still a recreational facility. So this would be if somebody wanted to put in another pool, a competing pool. Is that
correct.
right?
I
This
guess.
isn't personal.
If you go down on Foothill, there's swim clubs, things like
Right,
that,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
But if we're already amply regulating it somewhere else.
Do we allow swim?
Oh, single family, not commercial.
Residential, not commercial.
I think, I mean, I guess the issue is we allow swimming pools as accessory uses in, I think, all the zones. So I guess this is for standalone?
Yeah, this is like the whatever the pool is over there at Sierra Vista.
But the way that's sort of dumb is it says when located within 25 feet. So if you have a pool, like I bet you the pool in town is more than 25 feet.
Yeah, there's
Back
a
from the
parking.
road?
There's a back
Is
to.
there parking?
Yeah, there's
front?
parking in the
So
structure.
it's not a allowed use. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
So they would have to come before. All we're saying is that they're going to have to come before us.
maybe what we want to do is change
No,
this
they
to
wouldn't
say,
be able to do it.
they just wouldn't be
because-
able to do it.
yeah, they couldn't do it at all. This list is our most restrictive list. These uses are the most restrictive. You can have them if you can get a conditional use permit, otherwise you
this,
can't.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this has
So
to.
if we deal with the swimming pools as accessory uses in all the other zones, maybe we should just say standalone swimming pools, hot tubs, or other recreational
But
facilities.
strike all the
Yes.
distance stuff.
And strike all the distance stuff.
I agree.
Mhm.
So put a period after facilities and strike everything else?
A colon,
Just say standalone swimming.
standalone.
Right. Veterinaries, kennels, and small animal hospitals.
Didn't
Is that
we
the
have that in
hospital
the
is small or
commercial
the
list?
animal is small?
Yeah, but this is everywhere, so you could put it in R1, or
Yeah, I think that's fine.
that's fine.
Okay,
Tom, this is your chance to be very restrictive and spell out what type of animal, small animal.
so now are we going on to conditional
Yeah,
uses?
yeah.
Maybe
All
we
right.
could leave a
Without
list of
Okay,
slaughter.
so
half.
these are, B is res-only conditional uses.
Yes, okay.
Maintenance and keeping of horses or mules as enumerated in
Yeah,
2.0. Is that
fine.
animals generally? Is that still there?
Yeah, I assume. Family daycare home large, now we just put that one in, right?
Okay,
This, and then this other one is the 6 or under, right? 6 or fewer, the next one. Or no,
The-
that's
Right.
not, that's 7 or more, because this
Yes,
is
'cause it's
CUP.
large.
You're right. C is something we need to fix when we do the R2 zone, right?
There's nothing there. right?
Yeah.
Wait,
It just basically means if you sneeze in R2, you need a CUP.
oh, but is C a because B says R1, R2, R3.
Right. Yeah, C is just saying that you need a CUP for anything you do in R2. And so there used to be one in here for
Oh, I see.
R3, and we
Took it out.
deleted it, and we brought that regulation concept into,
So is C like a placeholder or what's
no, see, the concept was that you need a CUP for anything you do in R2.
Okay. But then there's also the code, the zoning code for that section. That
Right. And what we need to do is we need to overhaul the R2 code and then delete
then
this line.
Delete this, I see. Hillside is.
I don't understand D, because
Yeah.
I thought our hillside code already has,
Conditions about grading and
yeah,
subdivisions?
it has,
Well,
well,
what
also we have,
requires a
we have hillside development permits now.
Yeah.
So we should take out D, don't you think?
Mhm.
Okay. E?
E is the commercial areas, we added these, so we're good. And
Oh,
F
we added
is
it, okay.
the wireless, the
Oh.
cell towers. So we're good with all that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's as clean as it gets.
So I guess the other question is there anything that you want to add in? Any new or exciting uses like, well, I guess we already got airports, right? If you want to have a
Drone.
drone thing, but I don't know, I can't think of any other.
When I read it, I was thinking of elimination as opposed to addition.
I think when that use comes to town, we'll deal with it.
I mean, I think those kind of uses have a ways to go before they're sort of codified, you know, I mean, they're still trying to figure out their boundaries, you know.
And Sierra Madre is usually not on the cutting edge of too much, so we will watch other cities as they get new and improved concepts, and then we'll decide. Okay. How do we proceed?
We take a break.
Yeah. Take a break?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as this stuff, we've got plenty of stuff to chew on. I don't know if we're ready to do a hearing or not, or if we want to take it back, bring it back for another discussion or what.
Probably
we're-
bring it back.
We're
Yeah.
close.
We're close, but we need a discussion on those, on what we're gonna name.
Yeah. But I mean, we could do that at the hearing if it's just a little bit of stuff.
Well, I
I'd
guess-
rather seriously try to figure it out among us first, because we have some issues in there that I think we really worked with tonight about what the real intentions are. And so we should try to present that with some clarity before we open it up to a hearing. That or a hearing could just turn into a lengthier version of the kind of discussion that we had to have tonight to really understand where we're gonna go with it.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Sure, we can open it, but as we can see from the public interest so right now, I mean,
Well, you should know that the first cut.
they're all watching on TV.
The first turn of this, we had somebody come and speak.
Yeah,
So.
okay. Well, you obviously did a good job,
Actually, two
because.
speakers, right?
All right.
So, okay.
How long do you need for your part? Yours is the last item, the last agenda item,
It
right?
didn't seem like.
I think
very
what
long.
we can do is we can continue that, and we have, we can put that on May 17th if we want. It's not a major pressing issue that we need to address yet.
Okay.
Excuse me, May 17th, it's a little up in the air right now, but I think I'm going to be on the East Coast for that meeting, And if we're referring to the issues that have to do with the
flow chart.
historic.
No, the flow chart.
Okay.
Well, they also
I
involve.
may miss but as far as the material that was put in here about the preservation issues and so forth, I really have a lot of input
Okay.
on that.
So we do have.
I'd like
one-
to not miss that.
Are you, will everybody be here on the 3rd, May 3rd?
I will.
We
Okay.
could put it on there. We do have a project that we'll be reviewing on the 3rd. And I don't think it's gonna take that long, so we probably will have time.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a closed session then,
That's true.
yeah.
But that would be before,
We can either do it before or after the closed session.
Yeah, we'll do it before.
Okay. That means people would have to come early.
So it's at 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock, can people come at 6?
Sure.
Yeah. I can do
Yeah.
that
Okay.
On the 3rd?
That'd be
On the
time.
3rd.
It's early dismissal
hour
at
should be
school.
Vincent, I think that with regard to the issues of what, for instance, a survey could cover or not cover relative to the different kind of considerations that are listed under the federal guidelines and CEQA, for instance, that there's some big broad issues, and that we may just want to retreat into a subcommittee to study these if you think that what I'm talking about is going to have some credence. Okay, so it may actually be not that lengthy on that first night, so maybe it will fit in with the other item. Okay.
Well, the other issue is, there's sort of the two things. One is the noticing, and the other is how we deal with, and maybe those are split up, and we can knock out the notice stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
when is our first, what we just went over, the commercial zone stuff coming back
Well,
around?
on the tech stuff, the subcommittee can do the modifications pretty quickly. There's not a lot.
Probably the 17th, but you wouldn't be here, though.
The name, that might take a while, and then,
Yeah.
but the other issue is the placeholder for the, like the hazmat and whatnot. That might take a little research.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I'm just thinking for my, for the diagrams, I can, if it's the 17th, that's easy.
Yeah, yeah. So we need it, like a week ahead, right?
And we've elected to put the planning flow chart to
The 3rd.
later, the 3rd. Okay, so that brings us up to oral communication. There's no one in the audience, so we'll skip that. Anything from the planning commissioners? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got one thing that I'm happy about. Okay, you know, the city of Pasadena has its annual Historic Preservation Design Awards, and I just found out today I won 2 of them.
Wow,
this year.
congratulations.
Thank you. They're both very, very curious projects, yeah, I'm very pleased about that. I've won 2 previously in years past, and yeah, they were both great little projects that required a lot of research and a lot of novel ways of communicating and doing things. And they were both with Eagle Restorations Group. The president of Eagle, Jeff Seidner, is Sierra Madre
Okay, well,
resident.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else from staff? I want to publicly thank John Hutt for his carrying the banner on this. We have,
Not enough.
we've lived with the imperfect regulations, and we've, worked around it, and it's, I mean, and I've been watching this for almost 10 years, so it's nice to it's only taken a decade.
So,
But we're, you know, but it's nice to have some resolution on these things.
Yeah, I concur. Thank you very much.
So,
Good work.
it's not happening without your guidance and your intelligence, so I'm very grateful. You're welcome. How about from staff?
I think we just to recap again, we're gonna have a closed session
Right.
most likely on the 3rd of May at 6 PM, and we'll have one case that we'll be reviewing, and then we'll place our item that we're continuing tonight for the planning entitlement process flow chart to that same evening.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, we stand adjourned. See you May 3rd.